to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine. The British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Happy Monday morning. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, as you know, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is absolutely fantastic to have your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and I'm back on the airways. And wow, have we got a lot to talk about. If you're going to miss anything of the show, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page. It's called cunningly The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. But coming up in this hour, Downing Street. I mean, I think I say this every Monday morning. I really do. They're scrambling to protect Keir Starmer. This time, it's over Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, the former UK ambassador to the United States. It's emerged that Number 10 was aware of Lord Mandelson's emails to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein days before he was sacked. And they certainly were aware before the Prime Minister last Wednesday at PMQs went out and said he completely had full confidence in Jeffrey Epstein. I have to say, I mean, he said that, didn't he, ahead of Angela Rayner's resignation as Deputy Prime Minister as well. Woe betide anybody in whom the Prime Minister has full confidence. If only he had full confidence in himself, we could be sure to be rid of him very soon. Well, he may be rid of him rather sooner than he would certainly be hoping. A revolt among Labour MPs over the handling of the crisis, growing speculation he could be ousted before the next general election, even as early as after the next elections, local elections and regional elections in May, with the Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, being touted as a potential replacement. Well, we'll talk about all of that. Plus, hurrah, the weekly Monday announcement from the government involving migrants. The first illegal Channel migrants are due to be deported on commercial flights to France this week under one-in, one-out returns deal with Macron. The first migrants are going to join tourists and business travellers on an Air France flight today, we're told, barring any last-minute legal challenges. Who knows? They may already be in Paris. But what happens to them when they arrive there? Plus, Keir Starmer has told Tommy Robinson that he will not, he says, surrender the British flag to violence after more than 150,000 people marched in London on Saturday for the Unite the Kingdom protest. We're going to be talking about all of that and plenty more, about also including why Prince Andrew may be sweating a little bit. Oh no, he can't sweat, can he? Over his links with Jeffrey Epstein as well as Mandelson. All that coming up, and I'm delighted to say joining me for all the chat today throughout this 3 hours will be commentator Sam Armstrong. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining me. It's been a heck of a week while I've been away, I have to say. And it's one of those things when I'm away, I always say, oh, God, I wish I wasn't away this week. But as usual, I've come back to my fair share of news. And I do want to talk, just before you and I have a chat, Sam, I want to talk to you about the week I've had, because I've been away in Israel on the past week, very much a work trip, not a holiday. And there's a lot, as we know, has happened while I've been away. The Prime Minister's future's under threat. Peter Mandelson, as I say, sacked as the British ambassador to the US. The murder of Charlie Kirk, and Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom protest in London. And when all this was happening, I was in Israel, touring around the country, visiting some of the scenes of the October 7 massacre, the kibbutz, where so many died or were taken hostage, the Nova Festival site. I went to Hostage Square to meet with the families of hostages taken by Hamas, some safely returned, some who died in captivity, and some who are still there, being starved and tortured in those tunnels in Gaza. It has been a haunting and an emotional experience. But the thing that's most surprised me is how inspirational, how uplifting, and how strong the Israeli people are. Now, Western governments like ours here in Britain think they have much to teach Israel about, right and wrong, and how to conduct a war and how to treat their enemies. But actually, I think it's Israel that has much to teach us. It's a country where everyone flies their flag with pride, where young people, kids just 18 and 19, put on their uniforms and proudly head off to defend their land, where everyone, no matter whether they are religious or secular, Jew or Arab, young or old, black or white, feel united in their belief in their country. And yet they don't all agree with their government or with their Prime Minister or every military strategy. But that's democracy. That's a strength, not a weakness. But this is a people, this is a country that faces an existential threat, not just to their way of life, but to their very lives. Yet facing the threat of death, they understand the true value of life and the true value of freedom. They know that their country, their culture, their people are worth fighting for, and yes, worth dying for. I heard not one word of hate for their enemy. I was in Israel for 9 days. I heard not one word of hate, but I heard non-stop talk of their overwhelming love for their own country. Here in Britain, where young people say their country isn't worth fighting for, it is humbling to see young Israelis so proud to serve. In every street you see the Israeli flag proudly flying. You see yellow ribbons for the hostages and bring them home posters bearing their names and their faces. Every single one of those 48 hostages, alive or dead, still held in Gaza, their names, their faces are known to every single person in Israel. To return to Britain, a country where so many of our politicians, our media, our ruling elite, our academics, everyone in those classes, they're embarrassed by our flag. They're embarrassed by our culture, embarrassed by our history, where they deride the Judeo-Christian traditions that have made us who and what we are today, where many of the good people celebrate the murder of a 31-year-old husband and father in America, assassinated just because they didn't agree with him. Today we learned that 2/3 of Britons under the age of 40 don't even know what the Battle of Britain is. Yet, just like Britain in the 1940s, Israel is fighting an existential threat to their existence. The fascist forces that surround their nation are there now, and they are fighting now. Not only is this a clear battle between good and evil, where there should be not a scintilla of doubt about which side we should be on. Not only is this the front line of the battle for Western civilization in the face of the threat of Islamofascism, but just like Britain during the Second World War, Israel is a beacon of light for the West. The pride, the sense of community, the sense of duty, of self-belief and of strength. We in Britain used to have all of those things, and we are losing those qualities. The truth is that as Western leaders like Keir Starmer, the United Nations and all the other international bodies want to lecture Israel, but actually the truth is we have much to learn from them. And time is fast running out for us to learn those lessons, for us to defend our nation, because what we have here in Britain is still worth fighting for. So that was the lesson I had from Israel. That was the lesson I had reading the news while I was away and commentating on it, and desperately wanted to be back on air to talk about it with you, and now I get the chance. So I do want to hear from you. on all the topics we're going to talk about today, particularly Keir Starmer facing that revolt by Labour MPs over what he knew and when about Lord Manderson and his relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein before he was sacked as our ambassador to the United States. What's your reaction? Should he never been appointed in the first place? Is this actually about Keir Starmer and his abject lack of political nous? His lack of morality in appointing a man who just thought it was absolutely okay to carry on being mates with someone who was already convicted of trafficking young girls for sex. I want to know your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can follow us, get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. And, of course, calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Commentator Sam Armstrong, as I say, joining us in the studio for this entire show. What do you make of where we are right now?
Today's Battle of Britain Day, and 85 years ago, the finest men of the greatest generation stood alone. And I mean alone. All of Europe had given in. America was still a long way from joining the war. 2,500 men went up into the sky every day in planes that were, in many ways, inferior to their German equivalents. But through their sheer tenacity, through the pluck, the spirit, the resolve, they defeated the Nazi invading machine and they changed the course of history. At that point, no one would have taken bets on the UK prevailing in that conflict. Nobody would have. But we did. And with it, we genuinely, and I mean this literally, we literally saved the world. Yeah. That's living memory. And I cannot fathom how we have fallen so far. Reading that 2/3 of young people don't even know about that.
Yeah. And they wouldn't care if they did.
Churchill said that if the British Empire stood for 1,000 years, men would still say that that was our finest hour. I agree with him. And yet our education system, the kinds of people that we've admitted en masse into the country, simply don't care. They are embarrassed about who we are. They're embarrassed about where we've come from. And then is it any wonder that if there was a war tomorrow, a poll of young people says 1 in 10, 1 in 10 would be prepared to fight for this country.
Tells you everything.
I am beyond fearful, beyond fearful. I went out over the weekend back into the English countryside and, it's a relief to be out of London. It's a relief to be amongst normal, ordinary people doing the right things, working hard. I was at a livestock market. You can't get more English than a rare breed sheep market, which is what I was at. But then you come back into this morass that is London. You read of today's latest nonsense from the government about how they're going to do nothing, absolutely nothing for all intents and purposes to stop the literal invasion coming into this country, which is going on. And I just despair. Have we really fallen so far in 85 years that we don't even know what we did?
Yes, is the answer. It's absolutely tragic. I can see the phones lighting up. I know people are feeling the same way. It's soul-destroying is what it is. And I said that's what I found so uplifting about being in Israel, which I was surprised that I felt that way. And coming back here and castigating people, the fact that Keir Starmer is, telling Tommy Robinson he will not surrender the British flag to violence. There was some arrests at that protest. I know people who were on that protest on Saturday who were perfectly normal, lovely people who not a racist bone in their body, not a xenophobic bone in their body. They just want to stand up for their country and they're fed up. And we need to talk about all of that. I mean, people claim there were 3 million people there. There weren't 3 million people there. This is nonsense. But it doesn't matter. It was a statement, and more people are willing to make that statement. And I think that's very telling. The protests against the migrant hotels, that's all tying in. But all of it ties in, does it not, with these Channel migrant flights from today, the 1 in 1 out deal. And genuinely, what I love is that this government thinks, we finally got a good news story because we're going to send one over and then another one's going to come. I mean, they are living under delusions, thinking that we're all going to go, oh, well, in that case, absolutely fine. Well done, Keir Starmer, for dealing with the biggest issue of the day. We'll completely forget about Manderson and Rayner and the budget that's coming in November. All fine. Carry on as you were. And it's quite clear that even Labour MPs get that this is now talk about existential threat to the Prime Minister. But what is so hilarious is the person they are apparently looking to muster behind if Keir Starmer falls, or if they oust him next year, as possibly just 2 years into his term in office, would be Andy Burnham. He's a nice guy. I like the guy. His policies, though, are to the left of Keir Starmer's, such that he has any policies. I mean, you're into this bizarre territory where Labour, whatever the problem, first they deny it's a problem. Second, they tell everyone who says it is a problem they're a bigot or a fascist or far right or racist or something. And third, their solution to the problem is always piecemeal or nothing and or wrong. And fourth, when that goes wrong and everyone's upset about it, they think a bit more of that is the answer. They haven't got a clue.
Yeah, and sometimes I just wake up and I just think they're just the wrong people in the wrong age.
At the wrong time.
There just doesn't seem to be a recognition that Britain is now in a crisis. And I mean a literal crisis. Yeah. On every measure, every warning light that could possibly be going off on the administration of a country is flashing red now. The lack of faith in our institutions, the sheer strain on public services, the fact our economy hasn't grown basically at all for the last 20 years. We've got systematically poorer before our own eyes. Everything is going wrong, and what it cries out for is just an end to the tinkering political culture that we have had basically for 40 years.
Telling us that telling supermarkets what can be at the end of a supermarket aisle, but not tackling the people shoplifting from that supermarket, telling us what we can and what we can't eat, but not having an NHS, a health system that actually functions like every other sodding country in the world that's got a vague, Western civilization. We are being run by inadequate fools.
We are, but in a sense they know it, right? And they are just...
No, they think they're brilliant. They think they are the good people. They're holding back the tide,
But Julia, this government, if Keir Starmer wanted to, he could stop the boats tomorrow. Yeah. Any politician, if they had the will...
My dead guinea pig could stop the boats tomorrow.
It is glaringly obvious what needs to be done. But instead of doing that, they will literally grasp at anything, absolutely anything. Oh, everyone's now going to have to bear a national ID card. Oh, everyone's going to have to do this and that. They will change everything other than confronting the reality that every year 100,000 people are breaking into this country illegally, brazenly, flagrantly, and when they arrive are being put up at hotels at our expense. They need to stop it. They won't do it, and instead they're prepared to do anything to us in order to keep not doing what they need to do.
How significant is the Mandelson affair? Now, I mean, I have history with Lord Mandelson. A lot of the focus today in the papers is about Lord Mandelson. And, he's a big figure, and particularly for a lot of the journalists writing about it, they will have been their formative years in political journalism when Mandelson would have been, a very powerful figure. He's not a fan of mine. I know that for a fact. I was once standing in a members' lobby in the House of Commons, which is where the public can't go, but it's it's MPs and journalists. And I was talking to a Labour MP, I was a political editor of a national newspaper, and Peter Mandelson came up, walked up, put his arm around the MP, pulled him away and said, "We don't talk to her," and walked away. We have history. He's been on my show since, most elections and but I'm genuinely going to say he's genuinely not a good person. No. I think he's genuinely a malign character. He's never met a billionaire he doesn't like. He doesn't want. He can stay at their villa, go on their yacht, borrow some money from them to buy a house, or go to their island. It doesn't matter. I mean, Chinese business links. There are so many questions I have about him. Yeah. Does it matter whether the Prime Minister knew on Monday or Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon last week that Peter Mandelson had written these string of basically I love you emails to his good friend Jeffrey Epstein, and basically saying, this awful conviction against you. This was the only thing he has been convicted of. He'd been arrested and charged, hadn't been obviously convicted of his offences. But this was trafficking underage girls over state lines, for God's sake. I mean, anyone who had any morals walked away from him. Even if they pretended they didn't know before then, anyone else would have walked away. But no, not Lord Mandelson and not Prince Andrew. We'll talk about Prince Andrew later, because he must be sweating right now over the emails he would have sent to his good friend. But does any of this matter, or is this really about the big picture, not only of abject incompetence in Number 10, the Prime Minister losing, his Chief of Staff, his Transport Secretary, his Deputy Prime Minister, his Anti-Corruption Minister, now the US Ambassador, the British Ambassador to the US, appointed against the advice of the vetting committee. Is this just about abject incompetence and poor judgment? Or is this also about morality? That he thought that having someone who he felt he could work with was more important than having someone who was of good character, as well as a bit. I'm sure we've got someone who could be our ambassador who doesn't have loving emails with a paedophile billionaire in their background. Surely there's one person in the diplomatic service who can do that.
Well, Nigel Farage would have been one who, of course, put himself up for the job and said, I have excellent relationships with the president. And you can only imagine that there may have been some thoughts in Downing Street over the last weekend thinking, all right, why didn't we take that? That would have dealt with a couple of our issues right now. Well, look, I think actually what jumps out at me is the sheer hypocrisy of Keir Starmer. Before he went into office, he taunted, he goaded the Tories about the fact that they'd appointed a bunch of people that had turned out to be a little bit dodgy too. And in part, this is the kind of life and reality of politics. It just is, I'm afraid. I mean, Peter Mandelson conducting a relationship with a convicted paedophile, let me be clear, is the most extreme of the scandals I've ever seen. And what could have possibly warned you about the twice resigned in disgrace Ambassador Peter Mandelson that he was likely to go wrong again? And I do have some sympathy for people who turn around and say, look, the political journalists, you, me, we get very excited about the likes of Peter Mandelson. But actually, have you been out there in the country and seen that to the extent to which it's going to hell in a handcart? And can't we focus on that instead? But I do think that this is a Prime Minister who literally came into office just believing that we will just be better. We will just magically be better. We're the smart
And everything
chaps.
we do is good because we are the good people.
We're the sensible people. And they are having in real time a wake-up call that, no, actually, this country faces real and profound problems. It needs massive changes. And I really, really question if this are the bunch to deliver it. And look, I think they are beginning to question it. And
no, but they think the answer is someone further to the left.
Well, they do. But at this point, look, if I was the Labour Party, I was thinking about this morning, I would put in a mad socialist in, because at least, look, you know, Keir Starmer, the whole point of him is if you're a Labour left-winger, you might not like him, but at least he'll get us into power. At this point, you're thinking, we're never going to get re-elected. We might as well do some of what we want in the while we've got the chance.
I want to hear your thoughts on all of this. What a Monday morning. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000 to have your say. Lots of calls coming in. Lots of top guests throughout the show. Going to talk to Andrew Neil a little bit later. I know he's on a rival station now, but it's Andrew Neil. We're going to be talking to him coming up very soon as well. And Sir Ian Duncan-Smith up at 10:30. But get your calls on air up next, so get on the phone lines. This is Talk.
Keir Starmer was sort of adamant in his very legalistic way that all due process had been followed. We have followed the process to the last jot, dot and comma. Every I was dotted and every T was crossed. He never much seems to care about what the outcomes are, as long as the process was followed. But it's now emerging, isn't it, that quite a lot of warnings were flagged up, unsurprisingly, about Peter Mandelson, and those were overridden by the Prime Minister and perhaps by the behest of Morgan McSweeney.
It's just one thing. We're just lurching from one crisis to another. And as I've just mentioned, Mandelson should never have been appointed. As you've just stated, it was known about his relationship, about him staying in the flats. The recent revelations that we've heard this week are unacceptable. And when you've got party loyalists coming out and defending the indefensible, I think is unacceptable.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:26 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 03444 499 1000. Well, have your say on, as you know, whatever you want to talk about, but particularly asking you about Keir Starmer facing this revolt over the Mandelson sacking. Who are we kidding? Third time he's been sacked. But what did Keir Starmer know or not know before he basically said he had confidence in the US ambassador? Well, I keep saying yes, but our ambassador to the US. But why on earth did he appoint him in the first place? People like me and many others were saying what we know about his relationship with the paedophile billionaire, even now, when he was appointed, is too bad for him to be appointed. But there we are. Let's get to the thoughts of Paul, who is in Burnley. Very good morning to you, Paul.
Morning, Julia.
Morning.
Keir Starmer, with regards to Angela Rayner, rather than make a decision to sack her, he let the procedure do his thinking for him.
Yeah.
When it came
the standards advisor, yeah.
That's right. When it came to Peter Scandelson, again, he let the process do the thinking for him. He doesn't make a decision. Yeah. When he did make a decision, with regards to trimming the welfare bill, his backbenchers hamstrung him. So this is a man who lets the process do the thinking for him, and is hamstrung by his backbenchers. Now,
is that because of a weakness in him? Is he spineless, or does he just not really have any views?
Well, Keir Starmer is a man who campaigned for Brino, a Brexit in name only. With Keir Starmer unable to make decisions that are hamstrung by his backbenchers, we've got a Brino, a Prime Minister in name only.
That's a great... Yeah, that is so true. He doesn't seem to be on top of any aspect of his brief. He chops and changes. He says he doesn't read his speeches. An island of strangers. Oh, I was bounced into that. I didn't read it. I didn't really mean it. He doesn't seem to believe in any of his policies or in anything that he wants to do, does he?
The only thing that runs through the core of this Labour administration is hypocrisy. And I cite Peter Kyle yesterday doing the rounds. Yeah. This is a man who...
Big mates with Peter Mandelson, by the way.
Absolutely. A couple of weeks ago, if you cast your mind back with regards to the Online Safety Act, Peter Kyle was a man who was trying to link Nigel Farage's opposition to that bill with Jimmy Savile. Yep. Yesterday, Peter Kyle was doing the rounds defending Keir Starmer's decision to appoint Peter Scandelson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hypocrisy.
Yeah, absolutely nailed it. Paul, thank you so much for that call. Russell is on the line. He's in the New Forest. Russell, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was at the march on Saturday.
This is the Unite the Kingdom march, yeah?
Yeah, it was nothing but a peaceful, respectful, filled with love, harmony and just concern for the country's direction of travel under what seems to be an ever-growing leftist agenda to take the country, to drive it off a cliff, essentially. in every direction. And why are they demonising what was a positive event? Why are the media saying it was far right when it clearly was filled with grandmothers, granddads who built this country up to what it should be? And we're in such a mess because of the media. And what I want to do is challenge Talk TV to ask the Metropolitan Police why they put out a video from 2020 of violence.
I saw that.
Saying it was on Saturday. When I was there, I didn't see one piece of trouble.
There definitely was. There are independent journalists who were there where there was trouble, where a sort of breakaway group of marchers tried to go out of their route to basically try and confront the, whatever they call themselves, they think they're the good people, protesters, I don't know, Unite Against Fascism, whatever they are this week, people. So they're definitely what they did. There were police officers injured. There were people who caused violence. That is the case. However, two things. Obviously, it's very clear that the vast majority of people on that march did not. It's also very clear that, when the police turn up to a march like that in riot gear and helmets and shields, but the fortnightly pro-Gaza marches, nothing to see here, we're just in our high-vis jackets. It's a very different kind of policing, it's a very different treatment of people, and certainly largely in the media a very different treatment, because you've got to bear in mind, they think I'm far right. I mean, everyone's far right. How much of a follower of Tommy Robinson are you? How much was it him leading this that what made you want to go on that march, or at all? Because
I'm passionate about the direction of where our country's going. I went to a march in Bournemouth, and Tommy Robinson obviously wasn't there then. It's not because of him, but he is the figurehead, say, of the movement to try and stop the direction of travel, which is so extremely worrying of where we're going to end up. Why is it every institution in this country, it seems, whether it's education, the police, everybody seems to be demonising the very people that are propping this country up, paying taxes. Yeah. And I've paid taxes for the last 35 years, and I feel like a stranger and an alien in my own country. And I'm sick of it.
Yeah, I think a lot.
Absolutely sick to the back teeth of it.
And told you're the bad person for thinking it. Russell, I really appreciate your call. You incredibly, brilliantly articulated a lot of the frustration people have. Thank you so much for that. Lots more calls coming in. Do keep them coming. 0344 499 1000. Going to take a quick break. Going to talk to Ian Duncan-Smith about, all the stuff we've been talking about in just a couple of moments. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest. Delighted to be joined this morning by the former Conservative Party leader, still an MP, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Very good morning to you, Sir Ian.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. I suppose, first of all, let's talk about Keir Starmer. His usual Monday morning predicament about the stuff that's happened last week. He does have a little bit of a problem trying to keep either chiefs of staff or cabinet ministers, deputy prime ministers, now indeed ambassadors to the United States, with Lord Mandelson being ousted. Although I understand not resigning, not actually being told he was going to, and therefore still able to get a nice big juicy payoff after earning £200,000 a year in that job. So that's always good for us to know. But what do you make about the issue of what did the Prime Minister know and when before he actually was forced out?
Julia, it's good to see you again back. Let me just say that the whole issue comes down not even really to Mandelson, because Mandelson obviously is the critical part of this, but it's really down to the judgment of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And I've done a Freedom of Information request on the Cabinet Office, I did it last week, to ask what, first of all, was he told about Peter Mandelson before he originally appointed him? Because I cannot think that the intelligence service and others wouldn't have mentioned to him that there was problems and serious baggage.
And we knew a lot of it. A lot of it was in the public domain.
His
links with China alone, for me, not a chance. This man is an inappropriate ambassador.
So he clearly made a personal decision, and I think Morgan McSweeney was part of this too, because
that's his chief of staff.
And I think together they decided, notwithstanding all of that, they wanted Mandelson because he was so critical to Blair and Blair's success in the early days, and I think they thought they could leech off the back of that, which is a disaster. Mandelson sacked twice from cabinet previously, a man who everybody knows had very weird connections when he was running the trade section in the European Union as a commissioner. All sorts of people, Dara Prasker and others, who have been sanctioned now and their assets seized. So he's got a track record, even if you didn't know the detail. And I just can't believe that he wasn't told, because it was in the public domain, that he had stayed on with the whole sort of sense of friendship for him all the way through for the 2 years.
His best friend, he was saying. And again, you should find this. But this is the thing. This was after Jeffrey Epstein had been convicted of child sex trafficking. He didn't get a speeding ticket. It was very clear. No, Prince Andrew as well. Certainly that's another person who's going to be sweating at the moment. Here's the interesting thing, though. Peter Mandelson is a very dangerous man if he's your enemy. We know this from when he was in government. He now is very angry at Keir Starmer. He feels he was wrongly ousted from this job, and it might be quite enjoyable to watch what happens in terms of the fallout. However, this also has an impact on our country. We've got Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world, our greatest ally. He's visiting in 2 days' time. We haven't got a permanent US ambassador. We've got that impacts us as well, which is an issue. But here's the other thing: there is an element with Keir Starmer where he doesn't seem to have any confidence in his own ability, any confidence in the bright young thing, supposed Labour Party. Virtually every appointment seems to be going back to somebody from the Blair era. This is Tony Blair government Mark II, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of a Blair government Mark II, but without any of the serious players. So
the competence or the ideas.
Yeah, exactly right. The one thing I'd say about Blair, I didn't agree with an awful lot of what he did and had real problems, etc. But the one thing you couldn't accuse them of was not hitting the ground running and knowing exactly what they were going to do when they got into government. I didn't agree with a lot of that, but, Brown and others, they had a plan and they went straight at it, and the Labour Party sort of backed them for certainly the first period. This is the exact opposite. No matter how much he seems to reach into the barrel marked Blair, he just pulls out bits and pieces that are nothing connected. He hasn't had a plan. They took months before they had any legislation in the House after they were elected. It was like Sleepy Zone here for a period. No plans, no great pace. And then there's one big thing that he does on welfare, which, by the way, is pretty small beer when you look at the overall overall bill, but he wanted to save $5 billion a year, and that was hacked to pieces by his backbenchers, who promptly turned it into a cost now of $500 million going into the Lords. So in a way, the authority has never really been there, I don't think, and I think it's what little there was is ebbing away. I mean, can't remember a time when Labour MPs were felt so released to be able to go out there and accuse the Prime Minister, and of course thereafter his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, that's one of their main targets at the moment, but all of those who are on the left of the party, and that's a pretty sizable chunk of people, are now in full cry against him and against his team. And I just wonder how long a Prime Minister can survive with this much.
And yet, this is weird. He's only been in power a year and a couple of months. This is the bizarre thing. This would normally be the dying days rather than the opening days. What do you make of the calls? I mean, the Sunday papers are full of talk about the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, as, the great white hope up north. Not actually an MP currently, but there is a by-election in Manchester which he might well go for. Reform, it appears, seem to think that this could be their lucky day and this is an opportunity for them. But is Andy Burnham, if he can get back into the House of Commons, is he the answer for Labour? I mean, speaking as a former, Conservative leader, obviously.
Well, I'd have to tell you I was a leader in opposition, which is even worse, because everybody thinks they know what you can do and should do, and they keep trying new leaders. But the main point about this is Andy Burnham, I know him very well, actually. I played football with him, and we've discussed lots of things politically. He's been burnishing his credentials and waiting for this moment to happen, and I think that he seriously is, I would think, a contender. But we have this problem in politics, certainly in British politics, where the main parties seem to spend their time hoping for the Messiah to turn up, ready-made, ready to go, and going to lead them to the promised land. And the truth is, politics isn't that simple, and it's very complex at the moment. The government is facing serious issues, not least of which is migration, out of control. It's been like that for some time. It caused real problems for the Conservatives at the last election. The big clash that he has got to decide to do, and this is something I think Labour will not stand for, but to deal with migration is taking away the pull factor. And the only way you do that, as I'm afraid now it's become very obvious, you have to deal with the misrepresented Convention of Human Rights and some of the other things like some of the UN stuff that comes through, rights of the child, etc. Because unless you can do that, they will keep coming. And this one out, one in nonsense that he's got now today, and they're celebrating it. Well, if you bring in an extra person who is now a legal entrant, they can bring their family. So it becomes one in and about 15 in and one out. And that actually doesn't help at all, because overall migration is a problem, not just illegal migration. So, these big problems, got an economy which is tanking now, thanks to some of the worst decisions that a chancellor coming in can do to an economy that was difficult, has now turned it into a complete mess. He now has his own private chancellor and his Treasury team in Downing Street. So little does he trust the Chancellor that he doesn't even bother any longer to take any of her advice. So we've got different power groups, and this is a year after he got elected. As you said, this is the sort of thing that happened to Tony Blair and to Gordon Brown, when they were about 6 or 7 years into their government, but not a year in, and that's why. So they weren't elected by a massive number of people. Only 33% of the poll elected them, which is the lowest ever for a government. They've got a huge majority because of the divisions on the right between Conservatives and between Reform. All of that has delivered possibly the most incompetent, worst government that I can ever remember. And I have to say, that includes Labour governments that I have seen. This one really holds the record, I think.
And also Conservative governments. I mean, you guys were in power for a long time. We are where we are. I mean, what do you make of things like the march on Saturday? Tommy Robinson organised this march, Unite the Kingdom march. We just had a caller on, Russell. He says he was at the march. He's attended other marches, nothing to do with Tommy Robinson. He said it's peaceful. It was about community. It's about concern for the country. This wasn't, a march of hate. And he says he didn't see any violence. Now, we know there was some violence. We know there was some arrests and some police officers were injured. And there, large groups of people. And ends up what's happening. But do you think that we should take heed that? I mean, some people are saying it's millions, but realistically, 150,000 people would march to the streets, even on the streets like that. And then have the Prime Minister say things like, he will not surrender the British flag to violence. Well, what do you make of all of that?
Well, first of all, the concentration on the violence is obvious because the media, that's what they look for and want to report. Obviously, it's newsworthy. But as I understand from the police, it was one section of the crowd that had broken through with intent to take on the other march at the same time. So that's where the violence was. I agree with your previous caller. The vast majority seemed to come there for a variety of different reasons, but all to do with their concern over what is happening to their country. Freedom of speech, problems about issues that they can't get the sort of services, the migration hotels. They're feeling now that the government doesn't care about them, cares only about shifting the deck chairs here in Parliament. I mean, I get that in my constituency. People are angry, and I accept that. We didn't make a great success at the end of that time. We didn't pull up from COVID quick enough. We didn't do the things we should have done. I accept all of that. But what I do see now is this government seems to be plunging headlong into a vortex where really they no longer seem to care about anything that's going on outside. And if you do attend a protest, they then accuse you of having far-right views. I don't think the majority of the public have far-right views. What they have is concerns, a love for their country, but at the same time a distinct worry that their country is going to a place that they don't recognise, and they want to have the control back, which is what they voted for at Brexit, is what they still want now, and I think it's time that the government woke up and said, we're going to deliver it to you.
Just finally, linked to that, your colleague Robert Jenrick, who we're hopefully going to be speaking to later on the show, is pointing out, the new poll showing 2/3 of young Brits under 40 don't know what the Battle of Britain is. Now, that's an abject failure of our education system. And I have to say, having gone through the comp system in the 80s, I wasn't ever told about the Battle of Britain. We weren't taught anything about the Second World War and what Britain did. But it's the anniversary today that we mark the Battle of Britain, this incredible actions by British forces to defeat a Nazi air attack. This is civilizational stuff, and I was talking about that at the beginning of the show. But the fact that so many of our young Brits, they wouldn't fight for our country, they don't know anything about our history, they're not taught it by our incredibly left-wing, ashamed of our country teachers and university lecturers. Where does that leave us?
Well, I have an interest in this because my father was a fighter pilot throughout the war, and I learned a lot about this. Had 5 gallantry medals. He was one of the aces. I mean, tough guy, and lucky to still be alive at the end of the war because most of them weren't. And the thing I remember was that when I was at school, we talked about the war. We looked at the Second World War for history. We talked about battles. It was all part of that process of learning and understanding this. That progressively, under left-wing educationalists, has been stripped out as far as they can from anything to do. They don't want to talk about battles. They seem to have it down completely on what happened historically with the empire, and they seem to want to make sure that we just strip out any concept of being proud of your heroes and of your country that has done so much. And I said to somebody the other day who was trying to have a go about this, and I said, no. I said, have a look around the world. Just look at what this small island has done for the whole world. The free market wouldn't exist for the UK.
Yeah.
The concept of common law, jury trials, habeas corpus, all things that came out of here. Every sport you can imagine was probably invented on the playing fields of some English school or other. And the reality is, you go through the list of these things, we fought and died for people's freedoms, in Europe, around the world, from the Far East. This is the real story of a most remarkable nation that is inspirational and is unbelievably a nation of leaders. Yep. What has happened to those that have come through is they don't want to hear about that.
That is the question.
I am proud of our empire because I believe ultimately, we had some problems and mistakes, but genuinely, what did we deliver?
Yeah.
Fantastic democracies around the world.
Exactly.
Like India.
So, Ian, I mean, we could talk for hours about this. Unfortunately, I'm way over time. But yeah, I know a lot of people in our audience and myself here and in the studio were nodding along with all of that. So, Ian Duncan-Smith, so appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. Well, we've just been mentioning that Unite the Kingdom protest. We're going to be talking to the stepfather of someone who spoke at that protest. You remember the schoolgirl Courtney Wright sent home from school for wearing a Union Jack dress because that was her culture. She was celebrating her culture on, Celebrate Your Culture Day at school. Well, so we're going to talk to her stepfather, Stuart Field, who was at the rally and when she was speaking. And we're going to talk to him up next. This is Talk.
He has said and done things that have broken the law. And I do believe in forgiveness and repentance. He's done his time. That means that he gets at least legally a clean slate. And I think that means that particularly where he's demonstrated contrition, and he's admitted to all his many faults. It doesn't mean that we can simply throw the baby out with the bathwater with this guy, because he's always acting from a place of emotional integrity.
The UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:52 is the time. Let's talk more about that Unite the Kingdom March protest on Saturday. At least 150,000 people attended. And among those was my next guest, Stuart Field. He's the stepfather of Courtney Wright. You may remember we spoke to him earlier this year when his stepdaughter was sent home from school in disgrace because she had dared on a culture day to wear a dress representing her culture. Yes, a lovely sequined Union Jack dress. Apparently that wasn't the sort of culture we were supposed to be celebrating. Stuart Field, welcome back to the show.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Very good morning to you. So tell us, you attended the march. Did you go to the march because it was organised by Tommy Robinson, in spite of it being organised by Tommy Robinson? Did that have anything to do with your decision to go?
Ultimately, it was Courtney's decision to go. We gave her the option as well, whether if it was something that she wanted to do, and she was absolutely over the moon.
She was invited to speak, yeah.
She was invited to speak, yeah. I mean, she having her voice taken away from her originally, it went quite big, and the story went around the world. So
yeah.
And there was quite a big movement at that point, raising the flags for Courtney and the anti-Britishness that people were seeing at that point. Obviously not anymore after Saturday. But yeah, she wanted to speak, and we've always sort of advocated for her to be able to express herself in whatever way she wants.
Yeah, and again, it was a peaceful rally. Lots of people were saying, oh, well, because it's Tommy Robinson and they don't, it's going to be far right. It's reported in many papers about the violence, and the media very much, as is always the case with anyone, focusing on violence. Well, apart from if it's Black Lives Matter, when, of course, it's largely peaceful, even as, people are setting fire to things behind them. But there were some arrests. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has spoken since, said to Tommy Robinson, he said, we will not surrender the British flag to violence. What did you make of that response?
It's outrageous. Keir Starmer needs to understand that flag has belonged to this country and the people of this country for many, many years before Keir Starmer came into this government. It's absurd that Keir Starmer somehow believes, in my opinion, that flag now belongs to him and the institution, and he has the right to take that away from the people. It's disgusting. The guy, to me, he's like a robot. The guy just talks like a machine. Yeah. He's this little echo chamber of thing. He doesn't even read his own speech.
Yeah. The Island of Strangers speech, which I didn't read it in advance. What do you make of it? I was talking a bit earlier on the show. I've just come back from being in Israel, a country where people fly their flag with such pride, and children, younger than mine and just slightly older than your stepdaughter are putting on a uniform and picking up a weapon to fight for their country. What do you make of this, our country being somewhere where the elites, because I don't think ordinary people feel this way. I don't think like your average Joe, thinks this way. They're embarrassed by certainly the England flag, but also by the Union Jack.
There's this whole sort of champagne socialist postgraduate movement going on, and it's been going on for a long time. Clearly, Saturday proved that the blue-collar, working-class, everyday people, the backbone and the spine of the country, got together, and they haven't had a voice for so long, and I don't think they've realised that they needed to speak until Labour came in and this government started changing things drastically. Now they realise they need to speak, and people got together and they spoke. Yeah. But it was said for a long time, this is a fringe movement. There will only be 10,000 people, possibly 40,000 people. But let me tell everybody, that was an insane amount of people. There was at least 1.5 million people.
Now, again, there's always a difference on numbers, and we'll often have, need to talk down a right-wing, in their view, march and talk up a left-wing march. And indeed, 10 people gather outside Parliament for a cause they agree with, like pro-Hamas, and they'll definitely publicise it. It's very unlikely there were as many as 1.5 million. Some people are claiming 3 million. The population of London's 10 million, for goodness sake. But it was certainly a huge protest. There were certainly way more people than people had expected, certainly than the police were and the authorities were expecting. But what was your overwhelming, I suppose, experience of that, Mark? What were people talking about? When you spoke to people, what did they say they were there for?
I started off in the morning. Obviously, we went to the staging area. There was bagpipes playing. It was very celebratory. People were in really good spirits. I never saw any trouble whatsoever. It was one of the most unifying, wholesome experiences. We went through the march. I was carrying my 3-year-old. I turned around to my left, and there's a father, and we both sort of give each other a smile because we were both carrying a child that he was half asleep.
Yeah.
And we'd carried these kids for miles, and there was pushchairs with mothers. It was probably the most diverse. There was black, there was white, there was Asian. There were people from all cultures, and they were all together. I've heard people say earlier, it was everyone was excuse me, sorry. It was probably one of the most British things. I'm sorry.
Well, also, my guess is, and I've covered a lot of marches and been on some marches, this wasn't the usual marching crowd. The socialist worker lot who turn up to everything. You've not done it before, so you don't know. Like, how do I do this?
It was a festival environment.
That's interesting.
Celebrating. It wasn't a demonstration. It wasn't a rally. it was a festival, and people were there to unite. People were there to feel that they could rely and we had hope as a country. You know, British people, the people of the country were uniting together for a cause, and that was the general feeling there. It was beautiful.
Yeah, you say that's beautiful, and people should feel that, and it should never be a source of shame or embarrassment or a threat for people to march in our capital city holding our flag. Stuart Field, stepfather of Courtney Wright, really appreciate you joining us for that. I'm going to get Sam Armstrong's thoughts on that. He's been unusually quiet the last few minutes. We'll get your calls as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is fantastic to have your company. Lots to talk about on the show. If you do miss anything of the show, if you missed the first hour of the show, what are you thinking? But you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and you can hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Now, coming up in this hour, Downing Street is scrambling, like every Monday, to protect the Prime Minister, as it's emerged that Number 10 was aware of Lord Mandelson's emails to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein days before he was sacked as the UK's ambassador to the US, and certainly before the Prime Minister gave him his full confidence at PMQs last Wednesday. This comes amid a revolt by Labour MPs, behind the scenes and now publicly as well, over the PM's handling of the crisis. Yet another crisis within just a year and a couple of months of coming to power. Growing speculation that Keir Starmer could be ousted before the next general election, with the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, being touted as a potential replacement. But is he the answer? Plus, yippee! The first illegal Channel migrants are due to be deported on commercial flights to France this week under the one-in, one-out returns deal. The first migrants will join tourists and business travellers on an Air France flight today. Indeed, they may already be on that flight, barring any last-minute legal challenges. And hilariously, the government thinks that this is going to take that topic off the news agenda. How wrong they are. Plus, police in London should be armed to protect them from deadly knife attacks, is what an internal Scotland Yard review has recommended. But senior officers at Scotland Yard have rejected the call. And we know the Police Federation, representing rank-and-file police officers, repeatedly said they don't want to be armed. But for how long can that continue? All of that coming up, plenty more besides. Delighted to say that commentator Sam Armstrong still with me in the studio, as he said every Monday. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, you're a Conservative, but the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, is set to make, well, another one of these major announcements at a press conference in London. He's just taken to the stage. We'll tell you what he's had to say as soon as it comes out. But there's no doubt at all the person facing pressure today is Keir Starmer. One of the things he said at the weekend, we were just discussing with Stuart Field, he's the father of, stepfather of the Courtney Wright, the girl who wore that Union Jack dress to school for a culture day and then was told, oh, you know, that's outrageous, go home. Oh, you can wear your national dress if you're from any other country, but not represent your flag if you're British. He was just telling us about attending the Tommy Robinson organised Unite the Kingdom march. More than 150,000 attend, some say up to 1.5 million, some say 3 million, who knows. A heck of a lot of people attended, and he said, you know, it wasn't violent. It was, you know, all cultures. It was all colours. It was families. It was friendly. It was like a village festival atmosphere. What do you make of then Keir Starmer saying that he will not surrender the British flag to violence? Is he misreading this?
Yeah, give it a rest, mate, honestly. Right.
I'll sum it up.
Come on. You are not someone that has cared about patriotism one bit your entire career.
He puts the flag behind him now, but he doesn't. I bet he doesn't touch it on the way past.
You went through university, you ran straight off to North London, you've had a very successful career representing the most fashionable left-wing causes, you supported getting rid of the monarchy, you've taken every single slightly anti-British approach your entire life, and now you're into office. Now you've seen some polling that tells you, actually, do you know what? British people still just about like and admire and care about their country. You're pretending that you want to, that you are the guy that owns the flag. No, that flag was here before you. It's going to be here after you when we've far forgotten you.
We're talking about footnote in history, Prime Minister.
Look, there were people at this protest, as there are every protest, both on the left and on the right, that what they like doing, I don't know why they do it, but they choose to make a hobby out of going to protest, getting drunk and throwing stuff at each other and at the police officers that stand between them. There are a bunch of blokes that do it from Stand Up to Racism, and there are some guys that do it on the far right. But actually, what we did see this weekend was a massive, historic, totemic occasion in which hundreds of thousands of people, and I do think it was certainly well over 100,000 people, possibly much more, came to the kind of event that a year ago, 6 months ago,
the key.
2 months ago, they just wouldn't have done. And
they might have said, oh, I'd quite like to, but I don't want to be associated with that. With them, whatever. And now they're saying, I don't care. I'm going to, because I do care, I'm going to make my voice heard.
Everything I can see shows a kind of strange national awakening that has taken place this summer, in which the British public, and I mean people who haven't thought about politics one bit their entire life, would rather be talking about anything other than that. They have been woken up. They have recognised what has been going on to our country, and they are saying increasingly, ever more fervently, enough is enough is enough.
Okay, now I think we're all going to agree here, audience, you and me, Keir Starmer ain't part of the solution. Is Tommy Robinson?
I think Tommy Robinson is a symptom rather than part of the problem, part of the way that we solve this. Tommy Robinson, look, you can listen to me, you can listen to whoever. If you agree with what he says, and I agree with a chunk of what he says,
so do I.
He is never going to be acceptable to a significant proportion of the British public who we need in order to affect some of the policies that many of our listeners care about. That's why Nigel Farage keeps him as far away as he possibly can, because Nigel Farage has came to that same recognition. What you need to win elections is 40% of the British public. If you can get 40% of the public together to go out, to turn up, to vote in the right places, you win. That is the political reality. And Tommy Robinson, you know, you might think regrettably, you might think deservedly, is popular to 10% of the public, maybe is up to 15 or 20%. But
he's toxic for everyone else.
He's toxic for everyone else, and that way a majority.
He keeps having a go at me on social media. I don't respond because I've said, you know, I've decried him and said I believe he's racist. I think some of the things he's said in the past when he's been caught on tape betray that. I do think they do. But I've always said, and I continue to say, that a lot of the things he says are right, and a lot of the things that he has said, he has been, you know, saying stuff which other people were not saying that was true, and he was derided for it, and he was, you know, and he has identified a lot of the issues. And has he been derided? And I've never derided him for that.
And look, Tommy has serious character problems. Let's be clear about this. Tommy is, at the end of the day, a convicted fraudster. He is someone that has criminally lied. He's admitted that. He's spent time in prison for stuff that's got absolutely nothing to do with his activism. And I think the fact that Tommy Robinson, a man with all of the problems he's got, that a man with all of the issues that presentation you might see that he has, the fact that he's become such a prominent figure is a reflection of the fact that the British white working classes have not found a valid mouthpiece for their views.
A lot of them are turning to Reform right now. Now, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has just been announcing in a press conference in London that Conservative MP Danny Kruger has defected to Reform UK. I believe in this Parliament that is the first sitting MP to defect to Reform UK. Danny Kruger was he's been a very interesting campaigner on a lot of issues, on a lot of sort of tradition and family issues, on as well a lot of moral issues. How big a loss is Danny Kruger, and could he, Sam Armstrong, be the first of not just a number but many? Because it's one thing standing for reform, it's one thing an ousted MP, you know, Nadine Dorries, you know, no longer an MP going over to Reform. This is a sitting Conservative MP defecting to Reform UK. How significant is that?
Well, I'm beyond shocked. I've worked for Danny for a very long time, actually. I know him very well. He's a close friend, and I didn't know that he was doing this. I guessed that from your face when I saw you watching the screen. He was, of course, he was the leader of the New Conservative grouping with which I worked on him that tried to turn the last government onto the path of light rather than where it was going. He was Robert Jenrick's... So he was calling for a lot of this stuff, that the policies that Reform are now espousing. He was calling for these not just publicly but privately too, behind the scenes. Yeah, he was Robert Jenrick's campaign manager last year, worked with him on that campaign. He was a shadow minister in Kemi Badenoch's operation. He was ignored enormously by this the leadership of the Conservative Party, and his ideas were scorned wrongfully, in my view. And I think this will be a huge moment. This is not a nobody in the party. This is not a newbie. This is not someone on the outskirts or someone who's, you know, a chicken run issue, you know, running to say. This is a senior figure, a well-respected, a very liked MP, who was, as you say, he led a grouping of MPs in the last Parliament. One of the campaign managers for Robert Jenrick, who came from pretty much closer second than many had expected. I know you were involved in that campaign for Robert Jenrick in the Tory leadership contest post the 2024 election. A shadow minister since then. We understand his role is going to be to head up Reform's process to prepare for government. Danny Kruger has just said, I've been variously a member, an activist, an employee of the Conservative Party for over 20 years, and I have many friends in the party, many good and decent people, which is why it's so personally painful for me to be doing what I am doing today. This could be the start of a flood of MPs saying, you know what, we ain't got a chance at the next election. The right is split. We know the left is also split. You've got the Corbynistas and Keir Starmer, but the left is in chaos too. But at the end of the day, I don't know anyone who either
on the record or talking private to me or in a WhatsApp, who's part of the Conservatives, genuinely believes the Conservatives will win the next election. In which case, is reform the answer?
Danny is... let me say this about Danny Kruger. Danny Kruger has not joined the Conservative, the Reform Party because he wants to win his seat at the next election. His seat was one of the safest, and he is one of the most thoughtful and least, much to my frustration working for him for a very long time, one of the least political with a small p people in politics. He has done this because he is concerned about the direction of our country. He's concerned that we have one moment to save the country, and that is at the next general election. And it is incredibly important that we kick out this Labour administration and get something from the right in there that is capable of delivering the massive totemic changes that we need to save the country. Otherwise, the very idea of Britain will die within 10 years. I believe that firmly.
Okay.
I have to tell you, for me personally, as someone
You're quite shocked. You're shocked by this, someone who worked closely with him. But that's interesting. So how many other MPs are there who were in private talks with Nigel Farage or his representatives who are thinking of doing this, could be doing this in the coming days, weeks, months or a couple of years, who, you, the leader, Kemi Badenoch, have no idea that this is happening?
He wouldn't have been on my list of the top 10. There would have been 10 names ahead of him that I would have put there.
Who's on that list? Come on.
Well, look, Suella Braverman has been long talked about as someone who's jumping.
She said she's not going to.
She said she's not going. Danny Kruger is not someone, as I say, who's flippant. He's not someone who's dramatic. He's not prone to swinging around in the wind. When he says he's worked in various capacities for the Conservative Party for a long time, I mean, he really means that, right? This is someone who was Ian Duncan Smith's chief speechwriter. He was Boris Johnson's political secretary, worked for David Cameron. He wrote David Cameron's Hug a Hoodie speech back in 2005. This is someone for whom the Conservative Party runs through his blood. If he's going, goodness me, there could well be a flood.
This is going to be very, very interesting. I'd love to hear your response to this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. How many more Conservative MPs do you think are going to go over to Reform UK? I mean, this is very different from an MP who lost their seat and is now saying, the Jake Berrys, the Nadine Dorries going, oh, I want a chance, back. They look careerist, I'm afraid. They look careerist. This is someone, you say, he's got a safe seat. He's been, advising people at the top level of the party, still a sitting MP. He's leaving. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. Try and get a call on this in the next 10 minutes or so. But let's also talk about Keir Starmer, because this is going to put a lot of pressure on Kemi Badenoch. This is going to undermine her massively at PMQs on Wednesday at a time when the Prime Minister, the Labour Party, are under huge pressure. I mean, we are talking about a Prime Minister elected in July last year. and we've already, with a huge majority, and we already have backbench MPs and we're told cabinet ministers and other ministers basically whispering behind the scenes, some even coming out right publicly questioning whether he's going to last to the end of this political term. We've got a huge number of elections, local elections and elections in Wales and Mayoralties and others next May. A lot of people saying that no one's expecting them to be good for Labour. Very likely they're very good for Reform rather than the Tories, your party. Whether he even lasts for days or weeks after that. And then we've got, the losing of the Deputy Prime Minister in Angela Rayner after getting the Prime Minister's full confidence, of course, and then the removal of our Ambassador to the United States, Lord Mandelson, after full confidence from the Prime Minister. What I'm kind of hoping is that the Prime Minister has full confidence in himself, so we can then get rid of him by the end of the week. But how big a threat to his premiership do you think is what is going on over Epstein and the links between Peter Mandelson and Epstein, and what the Prime Minister knew and when he appointed him as ambassador earlier this year, despite everyone knowing about his links with Epstein and I would say numerous financial links which make him an inappropriate figure to represent our country, but also when he was backing him last week.
Well, I think it's a sign of this administration's incompetence rather than the systematic problems that are actually driving them into the ground. I mean, look, he had this. We sat here a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Oh, we've got phase 2 of the government. Isn't this very exciting?" Phase 2 of the government has been even worse than phase 1. It's been just scandal after scandal after scandal, where the guy can't seem to catch a break. But ultimately, the reason that people are abandoning this government is not because of these lobby stories that we all get very excited about as political journalists. Actually, actually what it's about is the fact that this administration, this Prime Minister, does not have the solutions for the problems that this country faces. And the public would go for anyone. Frankly, the public would be prepared to vote for Nigel Farage, a man who's had his own little scandals and hiccups, and goodness knows that Reform MPs are going to, I think we can all say, are likely to have quite a few of them to come. I mean, the lot we've had in have certainly had them. The public are prepared to give you a lot of leeway if you're solving the problems we face.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister's problem is he doesn't want to, he's not prepared to, and frankly, he doesn't even know how to.
Very interesting. Want to hear your thoughts? Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. We'll get your calls on. Your calls also about that march at the weekend, talking about the pressure that Keir Starmer is under, and of course, first Channel migrants. Yay! Finally being deported from this country. One in, one out. I mean, yay! One's gone. Oh, another one's back here. They're going to bring their entire family. I still can't get over why they thought that was the solution. Even if it was on a grand scale, still not the solution. You know why? Because, again, this government, this Prime Minister, they don't think it's a problem. They don't know how to solve the problem because they don't think it's a problem, and they don't understand why we won't think it's a solution to the problem. And this is their big announcement today. I hate to tell Keir Starmer, but that ain't going to be what people are talking about in the pub tonight. 11:20 is the time. We're going to take your calls up next. Also, don't forget, in the next hour or so, we're going to be talking to Andrew Neil. We're also going to be talking a little bit more detailed about whether frontline police officers in this country should finally be, well, routinely armed. That's coming up. This is Talk. Said and done things that have broken the law, and I do believe in forgiveness and repentance. He's done his time. That means that he gets at least legally a clean slate, and I think that means that particularly where he's demonstrated contrition, and he's admitted to all his many faults, it doesn't mean that we can simply throw the baby out with the bathwater with this guy, because he's always acting from a place of emotional integrity.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:23 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and this is Talk. And major breaking news this morning. No, not the one in, one out Channel migrant deal. No, not Starmer's pressure over his knowledge about Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein before he appointed Mandelson as US ambassador. But the major announcement from the Reform Party by Nigel Farage this morning at a press conference in London of a defection of a sitting Conservative MP. This is the crucial thing. Not an ex-MP, not someone who hasn't really got a job right now, and frankly would quite like one that pays quite well in a few years' time. We're talking about a sitting Conservative MP, Danny Kruger, someone who has a safe seat, someone who has been a senior figure in the party, leader of the new Conservative grouping of MPs, former campaign manager for Robert Jenrick, the current Shadow Justice Secretary, when he was running for the leadership after the last general election, and a shadow minister, a man to say with a safe seat, not doing a chicken run, not trying to get another seat. We're talking about the first Conservative sitting MP to defect to Reform. Will he be the first of many? And how soon will that trickle become a flood? What does this tell us about what is happening on the right of this country as opposed to, as we can see, the abject chaos on the left of this country? Well, love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Tarquin is in London and he wants to have his say about Danny Kruger's defection. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. And more important things first. How was your holiday?
It wasn't a holiday, mate. I was in Israel visiting kibbutz and festival. Listen, this is why we've got our YouTube page, okay? Because I've just put out on social. We've just put out the tweet with my monologue at the beginning of the show, telling you what I was doing, what I learned from Israel. But I can absolutely assure you, the people I met and what I was doing over the last week, very much not a holiday. But anyway,
I didn't realise.
I'm back. Well, there you are. You know, I don't always publicise everything I do, but there we are. I did tweet about it. But listen, what do you make of the news that Danny Kruger has defected?
I'm trying to keep cool on this, Julia, because that's very serious now in this country. I'm sure Danny Kruger is a very nice guy. I don't know much of. I've heard his name, but that's all.
Yeah, he's not a household name to most people, but he's a serious figure in Westminster.
No, and do you know what? I think we need to remove personalities at this stage. Well, I'll try and do that for Let me see if I can make this work or not. It doesn't matter about Danny Kruger, what his name is. It doesn't matter. The fact is, he is a Tory. He is a Conservative. And I think that the reform wave and the Advanced UK stroke Tommy Robinson, Ben Habib, what we saw in London, a million. What we're seeing here, it's a seismic change, Julia. And what I think the danger for me in my gut visceral instinct is we don't need old Tories now. And I don't like Nadine Dorries. I think she's a bit of a hanger-on, a bit of a sort of a political...
Well, I mean, I like Nadine Dorries as a person, but Nadine Dorries still thinks that the worst thing anyone did was get rid of Boris Johnson, and he's the answer. I mean, the Boris wave people, lockdowns people, the Partygate, really? If he's the answer, I don't think she knows what the sodding question is.
No, and I think probably so. We've got really, really solid reform dyed in the wool, like Layla Cunningham, like more possibly the new lady chair of
Poaching, yeah.
Yes, those are the sorts of women in politics I represent and respect. Nadine, not so much. I think we just don't need the old...
Hold on, though. Hold on a minute, though. You say that, but if Reform are going to get elected, and we can see from the polls, they have to be taking voters from Conservatives. They have to be taking, voters from Labour. What's wrong with them taking people who look? Let me read you a little bit what Danny Kruger has had to say. He said, "I hoped after our defeat last year that the Conservative Party would learn that the obvious lesson that the old ways do not work, that centrism is not enough, that real change is needed." And this was stuff he was arguing publicly when they, before this, and this is something he's been saying privately. He says, but no, we've had a year of stasis and drift, and the sham unity that comes from not doing anything bold or difficult or controversial, and the result is in the polls and those lost voters aren't coming back, and every day more and more people are joining them in deserting the party that has failed. And so this is my tragic conclusion: the Conservative Party is over. The torch of conservatism is passing from one party to another. It's never been needed more, and actually it's never been more vibrant, because the failure of the Conservative Party has created space for an alternative. That's pretty strong stuff.
I think he'd do great as a journalist, don't you? I think what he should do now, resign his seat, trigger a by-election, stand Danny as a Reform candidate. Let's see if you win, sir. That's what you need to do. Don't just walk across the House. No.
I have to say, I am rather of the view that, and he's got a safe seat, but I'm rather of the view that MPs who defect, who have been if you're elected on a blue rosette or a yellow rosette or red, but whatever, if you leave, you should have a by-election. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. If he's that true and what he believes, then he stands down. That would be the honourable man or person would do that. He'd say, right, I would have way more. I'd probably vote for him. If he then won as a reform, yeah, I'd vote for him. But not if he's just walking across the floor. No way, Jose.
Very interesting, Tarquin. Thank you very much. Sam Armstrong, we'll just bring you in before I get to my next call. Should Danny Kruger have a by-election? There was a lot of pressure on Lee Anderson when he defected in the last from the Tories when they were in office.
I go both ways on this. I mean, he'd win. It would cost the taxpayer $100,000 or more.
Democracy is expensive.
In order to run it, but it's taken me a little while to get over this news.
I honestly, genuinely, Sam has been in my studio for really quite some time every Monday, spending quite a few hours together. I've never seen you look that shocked.
Danny is genuinely a close personal friend of mine.
And he didn't say a word to you.
He didn't say a word to me, and
why not? Do you think? Was it trust, or was it he thought you were trying to talk him out of it?
Well, I am a notorious blabbermouth, but
which is why we love having him on the show.
I will say this: that Kemi Badenoch has got some real questions to answer today. She has taken control of the Conservative Party, yes, albeit on a tough wicket, but when she came into office, the Conservative Party was sitting at 24% in the polls. Today, it's sat at 15%. She has spent a year, as Danny says, basically avoiding announcing anything, because that way you can hold it together, on the basis that she believes that that people were fed up with the Conservative Party bickering amongst itself. Undoubtedly, at the end of that year, she was wrong, and the Conservative Party, and I say this as someone who, like Danny Kruger, has been a lifelong member of it, really stands a real chance of becoming extinct in the next year because of the leadership.
Danny Kruger has said, my tragic conclusion, the Conservative Party is over. The torch of conservatism is passing from one party to another. The flame is passing from one torch to another. The old torch, once so great, is guttering. Bearing in mind, this is the emblem, not the green tree, the emblem, the torch. The old torch, once so great, is guttering, fluttering, held weakly in uncertain hands, but the new torch is already alight, already brighter than the one it is replacing, held aloft in firm and confident hands.
He's amongst many other things one of the most beautiful writers in Westminster.
Well, there we are. It'd be nice to have someone who could speak inspirationally to us. That would be quite nice, wouldn't it? Very interesting. Danny Kruger, as soon as you get off stage, do come on air. Stuart is on the line. He's in Wigan. And Stuart, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Keir Starmer and as well. But can I ask you first just what you make of this defection from Danny Kruger? Stuart, can you hear me, my love? Stuart, there's a lot of background noise, or if you're fiddling with your phone or something. Can we get you? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Right, go for it. What do you make of this defection first?
Yeah. Well, I think anything is okay as far as I'm concerned, but they've got to prove themselves.
Yeah, I'm worried about this line. And what do you?
As I'm concerned.
Stuart, sorry, our line's a little bit bad, unfortunately. But what do you make about I know you wanted to call about the Prime Minister and Peter Mandelson and the latest trouble that the Prime Minister got himself in. What do you make of all of that?
Well, I just don't see why anybody is shocked about it.
True.
I mean, the best prediction of future performance is past performance. And Labour Party and Keir Starmer especially, they've had a long history of coming up for pedos. As far as I'm concerned. I know that's a bit, it's very blunt and this, that, and other, but it's true.
Yep.
And Keir Starmer especially should be looked into over rape gangs and everything else. I've no time for it whatsoever.
Over his failure to act.
Just a quick one while I'm on, because you're not going to let me say much more on Starmer. Can I just say about the march on that weekend?
Very quickly, yeah.
Because the only thing is, you keep going on about whether it's a Tommy Robinson march. Tommy Robinson organised it, and to be honest, you go on about like reform, distancing him and this and the other. I've never heard Tommy Robinson say he wanted to be part of reform.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, they had to. Yeah, they basically had to refuse to let him.
I've never heard that, so I'm quite willing to be proved wrong. But I mean, at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, because I know you don't like him, but I've listened to him for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I know, I only know what I hear from you. And to be honest, sometimes it does me boxing, because I've listened to him for years and years as well. And I've never heard him say anything racist whatsoever. He says a lot of things that a lot of people will find unpalatable.
Yeah.
But I think you seriously underestimate the support he's got in this.
I don't underestimate it at all.
As far as I'm concerned, I'll go one step further than me. The bloke should be knighted.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
If you're knighting scumbags like Sadiq Khan.
I don't hold a torch for Sadiq Khan and his policies, but he's not a scumbag. We can do better than that. Anyway, you've made your point. I'm going to have to go because I'm already way over time. I always am, Stuart, and we really appreciate that call. Thank you. You're always welcome to call in and give me what for. I don't mind. 11:34. It's a free for all here. 11:34 is the time. Up next, going to talk to the Sun's Thomas Godfrey about this first, one in, one out of the first Channel migrants apparently to be returned, or may have already gone back to France today. But does that really make any difference to the illegal migration problem? Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. This is Talk with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. We are the home of common sense. Open breaking news in the last half hour. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has announced the defection of a sitting Conservative MP. That is Danny Kruger. He's a senior, very well-respected figure. He's not on the fringe. No, he doesn't have a seat that he might lose, but he has defected officially to the Conservatives. And he has talked about how Nigel Farage might be our last hope on the political right. He says we on the right of politics face a choice to embrace the change that is happening or go down to a deserved demise. He's talked about how the flame of conservatism is being passed from the Conservatives to Reform, and says the Conservative Party is over. He's talked about his great personal regard for Kemi Badenoch despite defecting, but believes the Conservatives are simply not up to the job of taking on the challenges ahead. Fascinating announcement. First sitting Conservative MP. We've had some ex-MPs and those who lost their seats in the last election who have defected, and councillors and others who have defected to Reform. This is the first sitting Conservative MP, and it's definitely not a chicken run because he's got a safe seat. We'll find out whether there's going to be a by-election or not in his seat, but we'll keep you up to date on all of that. Your reaction to that, really like to hear it. 0344 499 1000. That is a number to call. Now, that news has come on the day when, of course, the Prime Minister is facing an awful lot of pressure of his relationship with Lord Mandelson, and Lord Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, known all about when he was appointed as our now defunct UK ambassador to the US. And once again, on a Monday morning, the Prime Minister would have hoped that a big announcement on dealing with illegal migration would have, well, taken over the airwaves. Not done quite that job. The one-in, one-out French policy, agreed in June and signed and sealed in July, is supposed to be getting underway today. Well, here to talk about it is Sun News reporter Thomas Godfrey. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. You've been here before talking often about illegal migrants in their hotels. This is about getting them out of their hotels and hopefully to another country. What is happening, what is involved, and what's happening today as far as we know?
Well, as far as we know today, the first flights back from Heathrow to Paris are going to depart this afternoon. They're commercial flights, they're Air France flights, France's flag carrier airline. And those people have been selected from those who were detained at the start of this month after entering Dover. They've been held in the Harmondsworth Removal Centre now for around a month. Well, the exact details of their removal was put together. And from this afternoon and for the rest of the week, around 100 or so will be deported. The government say this is a deterrent that can break the business model of small gangs, of smuggling gangs. However, crossings up above 31,000 for this year already. It's going to take a hell of a lot more.
It's all going terribly well.
A hell of a lot more than a few dozen people on each flight.
Well, we were told it was going to be around 50 a week, but that was the pilot scheme. And we were pointing out that more than 50 a day are often coming in. And there was an argument. It wasn't one in, one out. It was 17 in and one out on the scale we're looking at. So that you say that coming every single day, every single week, depends on the weather, as we know, rather more than on any policy. But of course, these people who are leaving, they've been detained. They were just a bunch of men, largely, who were detained. I'm guessing all the people who are going to be on those planes will be men, and they will have been assessed. They will have been able to make legal challenges of some sort. This seems to be a much quicker process than the processes we've had before. But then I suppose because they're being deported to a safe country, France, where they were a few weeks ago, that you don't have the same legal issues.
Of course, yeah. I mean, you talk about 50 in a day, but more often than not, 50 in one boat.
Yeah.
So is the scale of people coming into the country willing to risk anything, including their lives, to get across the channel. And there may well be legal challenges from migrants in Britain to going back to France. We have seen before people fighting off deportations to EU countries, which are all considered safe countries. Places like Poland, where they say they could face persecution, Hungary. And so there may well be people who can hire lawyers or who can get hold of people.
Well, they don't have to hire them. We pay for the lawyers, legal aid.
We spend £1 million a week on legal aid for asylum seekers in the immigration tribunals.
Remember that the next time you're doing a child custody dispute and you're divorced. Don't worry. The legal aid is going over there.
As it stands. So the Conservatives this morning have warned there may well be legal challenges that could delay some of these deportations.
That's what we saw a few years back, didn't we? We had that plane. Was it Stansted?
Yeah, the plane was on the tarmac.
And then one by one, the illegal migrants were led away as each lawyer's challenge. But those challenges are still able to be, some of them are still able to be used. They haven't changed the law. There's been no movement, on ECHR and things like that. But the other key thing here is, OK, say 100 leave this week, say we get, dozens who leave today. We're also going to see return flights, presumably from Air France, or are we flying them on our flagship carrier-on BA from Paris? Have they heard of budget airlines, these people? Have they heard of them? Maybe they're worried about the legroom for these migrants. I don't know.
You do get a few extra inches
maybe they're worried about
France.
the in-flight service they wouldn't get. And they're going to be coming back to this country. Now, the French authorities have assessed these people as being people who would have a legitimate claim to be here. What sort of thing, have we been allowed to go, oh, yes or no to those people? And B, what sort of claim to legitimately be here would be considered acceptable?
You're right. The French have a veto, basically, on who we send back. So if there's anyone especially bad in this country who we'd want to throw back to France, they are well within their rights under the terms of this deal to simply say no and keep them here.
That's a fantastic accent. So we're going to get to keep the rapists and the Islamists.
If the French
lunatics.
can work out who those are, then they will. But then coming back the other way, because this is one in, one out, meaning the actual number of migrants doesn't go down, those coming here have been able to express their interest in coming to Britain through an online forum in France. The French and us then assess their claims, and if they're found to have potentially a legitimate claim, maybe they are fleeing genuine persecution for their beliefs, for their religion, if that claim holds up, then they will be put into a pool of people who are eligible to come here in return for someone leaving.
And we understand that one of the things that's going to be considered is their links with somebody here. So if you've got a second, I always keep saying, if you've got a second cousin in Leicester, you've got a claim to come to this country. It's a bit of a worry, that.
It could be a bit of a worry. There will also be people trying to reunite with families over here, and we know that families generally integrate better than sort of single young men, which has been a big concern, has been actually the demographics of the people coming over here. If you can bring in families, women and children, instead of young men, if they go the other way, then that might be better. They might gel into communities better.
Kids go to school, but again, there are extra costs there as well for us, aren't there? And in terms of this policy, the whole point of this, we're told it's a pilot, and again, the Rwanda scheme, that was, it was only going to be a few hundred people. I keep being told when I row with Tories about this, that but the numbers they were looking at wouldn't be a deterrent. Your chances, if you go over on a boat from France to Britain, of being one of the people detained and then one of the people deported, I mean, they're infinitesimally small. That's the reality under this scheme, even if we keep it going and it is successful. And it's very easy, isn't it, for the migrant, the trafficking gangs to say, look, we're going to do a deal. If you do get sent back on this basis, don't worry, we'll give you a free trip back again. It's still coming. I mean, that's if these people, they know what they're doing. They'll be able to do that. Now, if they do that, people are going to still come. What scale would it have to be at? I mean, you've spoken to a lot of the migrants. You've uncovered, the migrant hotels and all these people working, for Deliveroo and working illegally in the black market and Uber Eats and all of that. You've spoken to a lot of these people. How much were they going to be deterred?
I went to Calais a few months ago, and the one thing I kept hearing was that there was nothing the government could do. There was absolutely nothing the government could do, short of simply turning them back at the border or taking the boats directly back to France. Currently, when the border force pick you up as such, they bring you onto a cutter and take you to Dover for processing. The migrants I spoke to in Calais in one of the big camps effectively said that so long as they kept doing that, they would just keep trying. I've heard of people anecdotally who have come over twice, 3 times after being deported. You see it in the immigration tribunal courts. There's so many examples of people being deported multiple times and then re-entering the country without anyone noticing, and then staying for years at a time before being picked up on. And so this is supposed to be a deterrent. Will it drive the numbers down? Well, the weather is going to have more of a say in that in the next few months than anything else. And if there are legal challenges, then, well, that could simply drive the cost up of this scheme. Look, we'll have to give it time. It is a pilot, but the opening salvo, as it were, I'm not too sure it's going to actually drive anything down.
No. And again, we've got the whole issue of, so we've got 31,000 people who come. Well, let's say we were able to scale this up and 31,000 migrants are sent back to France, and then we get another 31,000 here, one for one. Those 31,000 here legally, legitimately, OK, we wouldn't have to put them up in hotels, but who are we kidding? We're going to be paying for their council houses. They'll be up on the top of the list. They won't have anyone anywhere else to live. But also they'll be able to legally bring in their own family members. So it's not 1 in, 1 out. It's not 17 in, 1 out. It's probably 17 in and probably about 34
and a few cousins
in,
and sisters
34
and
in and 1 out. I'm not quite sure the numbers add up on this. Fantastic to have you here, Thomas Godfrey, Sun News reporter, who's been covering all of this. Thank you very much. A quick word from Sam Armstrong on this policy.
Look, it's so frustrating actually to come into a radio studio every Monday and have to discuss an announcement from our government that I know is not going to work, you know is not going to work,
they know
it's not going to work, everyone listening knows it's not going to work, and just to see our country being led so abysmally, just put aside the politics for a second, it's just sad for our country that nobody will stand up and do what needs to be done.
I just think it's laughable that you're not a country if you don't control your borders. It's the first job of government. Second job of government is to protect people with law and order, and they're not doing that, particularly when it comes to migrants, criminality as well. Just extraordinary. Thank you very much for that, Sam. Thanks once again to Thomas Godfrey. 11:48 is the time. More on criminality coming up. We're going to be talking about the call from a secret Met Police report for officers to be routinely given guns. Is that what the public want? Is that what police officers want? That's up next. More on Danny Kruger, the first Conservative sitting MP to defect to reform. How many more will be following? This is Talk.
He has said and done things that have broken the law. And I do believe in forgiveness and repentance. He's done his time. That means that he gets at least legally a clean slate. And I think that means that particularly where he's demonstrated contrition, and he's admitted to all his many faults. It doesn't mean that we can simply throw the baby out with the bathwater with this guy, because he's always acting from a place of emotional integrity.
Keir Starmer was sort of adamant in his very legalistic way that all due process had been followed. We have followed the process to the last jot, dot and comma. Every I was dotted and every T was crossed. He never much seems to care about what the outcomes are, as long as the process was followed. But it's now emerging, isn't it, that quite a lot of warnings were flagged up, unsurprisingly, about Peter Mandelson, and those were overridden by the Prime Minister and perhaps by the behest of Morgan McSweeney.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:51 is the time. Just a reminder that breaking news in the last hour or so, that a sitting Conservative MP, Danny Kruger, he was campaign manager for Robert Jenrick at the last Tory leadership contest. He has defected to reform. He's given a press conference with Nigel Farage about the reasons for defecting to reform, apologies. And he said simply that Nigel Farage might be our last hope. He said the torch of conservatism is passing from one party to another. My tragic conclusion is the Conservative Party is over. And he's even said also that not even Robert Jenrick can save the Tories from reform now. He said, I wish that he had won, because I think he would have done things differently. I think he would have taken the fight to Labour immediately rather than Kemi's strategy, which is a respectable one. It's understandable why she chose it, but I don't think he could succeed in overtaking reform now. Can I get a quick reaction there from Sam Armstrong's commentator, joins us in the studio every Monday. But Sam, also you worked on Robert Jenrick's campaign. You worked for the Conservatives, worked with them. What do you make of him saying that even your man couldn't save the Tories now?
Well, This is beyond sad for me.
I've never known you almost
beyond
speechless.
sad for me personally. I really mean it when I say Daddy's one of my closest friends in politics. He is. I worked for him on Robert Jenrick's campaign, day in, day out. This is... I can't overemphasise what a big moment this is in the history of the right of British politics. That it was said until this moment that, you know, whatever you might think about reform, however much you might like them, they haven't got serious people that are capable.
He's
of
a
running
serious
the country.
person.
He is. Kemi Badenoch needs to come out and say something quite big in response to this.
She's going to be reeling from this, isn't she, indeed? Well, look, let's turn our attention to us. We're going to come back to that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that defection as well. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about it with Andrew Neil at the top of the hour. But first up, let's talk about a secret, a confidential Scotland Yard review into officers in the Metropolitan Police has basically concluded that police in London should be armed with handguns to protect them from crime, from deadly knife attacks. It's an internal review. And said the Met Police should consider routinely arming officers with semi-automatic pistols to protect the growing threat against their lives. Well, let's talk about this with Chris Phillips. He's a former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. He's also a former DCI with the Met Police. Good morning to you, Chris. So, you know, we've seen poll after poll, like the Police Federation representing frontline police officers saying they don't want to be armed. We know that senior officers have rejected this, but should Met Police be armed?
Well, it's an interesting one because I've always been against routinely arming the police in the UK. I've never thought it was necessary. But it's a sad indictment, really, on our society that we're now in a situation where there are enough people to really be concerned about who are just going to walk up and start stabbing people. And if we do that, then, you know, if we get to that situation, then the police have got to be able to deal with it. And without a gun, it's going to be very difficult for them.
Well, that's the thing. We've got, you know, tasers, and we said, but you know, there are armed officers. Now, I work in a part of London. I used to work at Westminster, I work at London Bridge, where actually it's not unusual to see armed police officers, but that's not the norm around the city. It's certainly not the norm around the country. Why is it that so many officers don't want to carry weapons? Because we know that currently those, you know, are highly trained officers. They got from the specialist firearms units. We know they're only deployed to the most dangerous incidents, and we know they're not trigger happy because they fire, you know, a handful of times every year, but outrageously do face the most extraordinary, often you know, trials. They not only, you know, lose their job and their livelihood and their pension, but they can also face criminal prosecution, as we have seen. In a number of cases, for, you know, doing their job and using the weapon to protect themselves, the public, and others. Is that why police officers don't want to wear them?
Well, yes. I mean, I never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. As you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations, and those situations appear to be getting worse. And I think the mood music within policing will change gradually. But what concerns me, Julia, is what happens if we do have a series of police officers or members of the public stabbed in terrorist attacks, and the police, you can't just give everyone a gun and say get on with it. It takes ages to get this thing through.
Yeah, it did. And we've seen, you know, sort of trigger-happy US cops, you know, shoot first and ask questions later. We certainly don't want to get to that situation. And, I mean, I've been a lot of time with Americans who are utterly bewildered by the fact that our police officers are not routinely armed. But has something changed? Is the country more dangerous? You know, are there more guns, you know, being, you know, have more baddies got more guns? And is the threat of knife crime now so much greater? I mean, we're constantly told, oh, everything's fine. It doesn't feel fine to someone who lives in central London, but we're told it is.
Yeah, it's interesting because the UK is an outlier here. You know, armed policing is not an issue anywhere else in the world, actually. Every other major city in the world, the police officers are routinely armed. There's no such term as armed policing. There's just policing.
Yeah, it's policing.
I've
just been in Israel for a week, and we had a security guard with us with a Glock at all times.
Yeah, and you know, people are used to it. It's a sad indictment, really, because I think social media and the ongoing sort of you see incidents many times over now on social media. We've all seen the assassination recently, and it gets into your mind a bit, and you do get a fear of crime that probably isn't as bad as we all think. However, if you're a victim of crime or you are caught up in an incident, you want the police to be able to effectively deal with that situation. And I think we are getting to that stage where maybe police officers would want the ability to carry a gun, to use it. I mean, we haven't even given all our officers tasers yet. You know,
that I find utterly extraordinary. But at the end of the day, when I'm thinking, the terror attacks that we've had, forget, someone with a, random, someone with mental illness with a gun. I mean, sorry, with a knife. But I mean, London Bridge is where our offices are, and when we had the 2017 London Bridge terror attack, what stopped those guys in the end? Rather than the guy, I'm Millwall, were people chasing them down and getting hurt. But the police officers who came in the van and got out and went and took them out, at the end of the day, guns did solve the problem.
They did, and we just don't know where the whole terrorism situation's going. I've been working in terrorism and counter-terrorism for so many years and I've been saying that this could really go bad very quickly, and we are in that situation. We do have an awful lot of people across the West that really do harbour hatred towards policing and towards society. And if they decide to suddenly kick off, so to speak,
what are we going to do?
We want our police to be able to deal with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Phillips, really appreciate you joining us. He's the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, and he's also former Metropolitan DCI. Coming up, we're going to get the latest headlines. We're going to be talking more about Danny Kruger. We're going to talk to Andrew Neil. This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Thank you so much for your company. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it really is great to have you join us. If you have missed anything of the show, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing, particularly if you want to hear what I had to say about, well, what Israel can teach us about, well, sense of pride and in our country and our history and our tradition, our people and what we stand for and what we want to do with it. Do have a quick look, go to that YouTube page, go to our Twitter page, and you can see what I had to say. Lots is going on. In the last hour, we have had the announcement at Reform press conference hosted by Nigel Farage of the first defection of a sitting Conservative MP, that is Danny Kruger. He has defected to Reform, and he said the Conservative Party is over, and he believes that even Robert Jenrick, the man who he helped manage the campaign of to run for the leadership, coming a close second last year, is not actually going to be able to defeat Reform's challenge. And we'll be talking about that in just a couple of moments. Also talking more about Keir Starmer and where he is right now, given he's facing a revolt by Labour MPs, indeed some of his own cabinet ministers, over what he knew and when about Lord Mandelson's friendship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein before he was sacked as UK ambassador to the US, given we knew an awful lot that frankly would have made him an inappropriate, unacceptable person to be in that job when he was appointed in January. It defies belief. But with that revolt by Labour MPs and talk about Keir Starmer being ousted before the next general election, is the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, being touted as a potential replacement? Is he the answer? We're also going to be talking about Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, the 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who was in a relationship, we now know, with his transgender roommate, potentially shedding light on a motivation for Kirk's death. Plus, among the people sweating today may well be Prince Andrew, after claims that his personal emails with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein could be made public and potentially lead to criminal charges even. All that coming up, plenty more besides. And I'd love to get your thoughts on everything we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, in particular where Keir Starmer is and the revolt by Labour MPs that we're being told about, plus that defection of Danny Kruger as well. Your thoughts on all of that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text 87222. You can also get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. My next guest is Andrew Neil, but just before I get to him, I just want to read to you some of the statements we've had from Danny Kruger at that press conference. He has said the Tory party is over, the Conservative Party is over. The torch of conservatism is passing from one party to another. He says the old torch, once so great, is guttering, fluttering, held weakly in uncertain hands, but the new torch is already alight, already brighter than the one it is replacing, held aloft in firm and confident hands. He says that not even Robert Jenrick can save the Tories from reform now. And he did back the now shadow Justice Secretary into that job. He says that Nigel Farage may be our last hope on the political right. He says we on the right of politics face a choice to embrace the change that is happening or go down a deserved demise. He says he's got great personal regard for Kemi Badenoch, but he does not believe that she is the answer. And in response, the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has said, Danny has made his case clear that it is not about me. I can't be distracted by that. I'm not going to get blown off course by these sorts of incidents. Just before we go to our guest, introduce commentator Sam Armstrong, who's in the studio. You'll have known him regularly, if you're a regular listener, watcher to the show. Sam Armstrong is never lost for words. I have never seen you so shell-shocked. You worked with Danny Kruger on the Robert Jenrick's campaign. You were close political friend of Danny Kruger, because you had no idea until he walked on stage that he was defecting. He's the first sitting Conservative MP. He was a shadow minister. He was a senior, serious figure. It's not a chicken run. He's got a safe seat. How damaging is this?
I was the head of communications on Robert Jenrick's campaign, and since the result was what the result is, I've not criticised Kemi once in public. I don't think that was right or proper. That response from Kemi fails to rise to the level of events. She's not rising to the standard that she needs to if the Conservative Party is going to survive. Unless something quite significant changes, I very, very genuinely fear that the Conservative Party will be functionally dead sometime in advance of the May local elections next year. This is absolutely totemic. It changes the complete formula. It used to be said that Reform hadn't got the kind of serious people you needed to run a country. I think that was right. Danny Kruger is that kind of person. Everything has changed. Unless Kemi Badenoch does something very different very soon, the Conservative Party will die under her.
Very strong words. Well, let's talk about all of that right now with Andrew Neil, journalist and broadcaster, his own show, of course, on our sister station, Times Radio, who joins us. Very, very good afternoon to you, Andrew.
Good afternoon.
Well, I was pretty sure we were going to be talking about the woes of the Labour Party with you, first of all, this afternoon. But no, once again on a Monday, it is the Reform leader, Nigel Farage, who has taken a steal on the news agenda with this defection of the first sitting Conservative MP, Danny Kruger. Look, you've been watching, you've watched them get in and come out for many, many years. How significant is this?
Oh, I think it's very significant. I mean, both of what we used to call the major parties, Labour and Conservative, are in serious trouble. At the moment, the Conservatives are in a bit more trouble than Labour, but Labour's not far behind and could be vying with the Tories quite soon in extinction territory, as the Tories are at the moment. This is the most serious development since Kemi Badenoch became Conservative leader. Danny Kruger's a serious politician. He's intelligent, articulate. He is a sitting MP. They haven't had an MP defect to Reform yet. And I think we ought to realise the magnitude of this. I think the Conservative, I've been writing for quite some time now, that the future of the Conservative Party is now in serious doubt. And I think we ought to realise the historic magnitude of this. The Conservative Party is the most successful political party in the history of democracy. There's no party anywhere in any other democracy comes close to the amount of time the Conservatives have spent in power. And as we went from Whig to Liberal and Liberal to Labour, the lodestone that didn't change was the Conservative Party, which is what makes this watershed significant, because it does look now that we are on the brink of the end of the Conservative Party as the major centre-right force in British politics. It looks, as Danny Kruger says, looks like it's over.
It is extraordinarily significant, this. Again, there's a very big difference, isn't there, between an ex-MP who's lost their seat, lost their career and their ability to pay their mortgage with their MP salary, to someone who was sitting seat. Now, we were talking earlier, he was in a safe seat. His East Wiltshire seat has got a majority of about 4,700, so not safe. But, you know, one of the MPs who survived the bloodshed July last year. Do you think this will be the start of other MPs saying, well, look, he's a serious figure. He knows what he's doing. He's been involved in this. He doesn't even think that he can wait around for some, a routing in the next round of local and regional, or the Welsh elections and others in May next year, and then see if Robert Jenrick gets in and things can change. If he's leaving now, will that send a signal to other, let's face it, serious figures in the Conservative Party that the Tory party is no longer a player?
Oh, I think as night follows day, it sends that signal, because Danny Kruger has status in the Conservative Party. He's not in the extreme wing. He's not a has-been. Yeah. He's not a whippersnapper. He's right in the mainstream of the Conservative Party. So him going, as I say, is the most serious blow the leader of the opposition has faced. And a lot of Conservative MPs will be wondering now, where is their future? You see, the problem for today's Conservative Party is it now has no economic base. The traditional basis of the Conservative Party, why it was so successful, it got an overwhelming majority of middle-class votes, and it got a third of working-class votes. That's been the key to the Conservatives' success. Well, the working-class Conservative votes have now gone to Reform, and a lot of the white-collar middle-class votes, particularly in metropolitan areas, have gone to Labour, or the Greens, or the Lib Dems. Yeah. What economic interest does the Conservative Party represent anymore? It's quite hard to see. And if you don't represent some kind of economic interest, we knew Margaret Thatcher, she represented the strivers, she represented the people who wanted to get on in society, and so on. But what does today's Conservative Party represent? It's very hard to see, and that's why I think the skids are under them. And it's going to be, I think, Julia, going to be quite hard to stop this game. I mean, Andrew Neil's first law of politics is that when you're on the skids, it's really hard to stop skidding.
Well, indeed. And I think we'll carry on that metaphor when we talk about Keir Starmer. Just one final point about Danny Kruger, though. Remember, this happened when Lee Anderson defected in the last Parliament from the Conservatives to Reform. And everyone said, well, you need to stand for a by-election. You know, you're elected on a blue rosette. You're not wearing that rosette anymore. You should leave. Danny Kruger has been asked about this. He says he will not put his East Wiltshire seat up to a by-election after defection. Do you think that's going to be able to stand, pass muster with voters?
Look, I think people are always in favour of by-elections, and so they're the ones that have to stand for re-election in a by-election. So I don't think he's any different there. And it doesn't matter in the end. I mean, if he was to run in a by-election as the Reform candidate this time, he'd probably win.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
I don't think it matters.
Look, you talked about a party with the skids under it, the Conservative Party. What about Labour? Every single week, come in on a Monday, there's another announcement. They're trying to get hold of the news agenda. Today, it's all about the one in, one out. Channel migrants, flights, we understand, leaving today. The first migrants in that deal that was done by Keir Starmer with Emmanuel Macron. But actually, their headlines really, they're going to be about Danny Kruger. Once again, Nigel Farage stealing thunder. But the headlines before then were all about Keir Starmer under so much pressure over why he chose to appoint Lord Mandelson in the first place last July as our man in Washington, why he ignored warnings, we think, from the vetting office about his links with Jeffrey Epstein, but after he was a convicted child sex trafficker, which is basically what he was, but also a cache of emails that Bloomberg uncovered last week, which basically forced the hand of the Prime Minister after he'd expressed confidence in our man in Washington and forcing him to sack Peter Mandelson. How much does this ask questions about the ability of this Prime Minister to make the right decisions at the right time with the right people?
It raises massive questions, and not just with commentators like me or you. It's raising questions within the Labour Party itself. It's quite hard to find a Labour MP at the moment, speaking off the record, who'll stick up for the Prime Minister. Yeah. I mean, most of them are beginning to speculate as to how long he'll last. And there's a kind of, will he make it to Christmas? If he does, will he go early in the new year, or will he wait till he gets thumped in the May local elections, the Scottish elections, and the Welsh elections? A triple whammy coming down for him in the merry month of May. So I think it is open season. And again, just as I was saying, it's quite remarkable that the Conservative Party, which has been a fixed feature of our politics, now has the skids under it. It's almost in a way even more remarkable that we're talking about Keir Starmer's future when only 14 months ago he won an election by a massive landslide.
This is sort of end of days, 14 years of Tory rule stuff, and then we're so soon. Did you think, you've been watching all these people, you know a lot of these people personally, you've been around a long time. Did you think it was going to go this badly, this quickly?
No. I mean, I had, I was pretty glad to see the back of the Tories. They were way past their sell-by date. They had lost the right to govern, actually, with endless new chancellors, constant change of prime minister. It was almost like they had turned government into a game of musical chairs, and they had lost any direction or any purpose. So I was in no means unhappy to see Labour take power. I never had any great hopes in them because I didn't have any great hopes in Keir Starmer, and I did say that the Labour front bench was probably one of the least impressive front benches in modern times. My penalty for that was that Labour then boycotted my radio show and I wasn't able to interview any of them, but it only made my point, I think. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised it's not gone well. I am frankly amazed. I think the vernacular is gobsmacked by just how bad they've turned out to be.
It's quite a feat, isn't it? There's a brilliance in the abject failure, isn't there? There's lots of talk that that Keir Starmer fell out with yet another chief of staff in Morgan McSweeney, who apparently was the man who really persuaded him, well, not just to give his confidence at PMQs last week in the US, the ambassador to the US. I mean, only a week after giving his full confidence to Angela Rayner as Deputy Prime Minister when she was about to go. Now, is there a problem with his staffing? And as such, how much is that something we can say, oh, well, it's the people advising him who aren't any good? Yeah. But there comes a point when if you're the person who chooses the people who advises you, that comes back on the Prime Minister, doesn't it?
In my experience, when things go wrong for governments, two categories are blamed. One, it's a bad operation in 10 Downing Street. And two, we've got a wonderful message, but we're just useless at getting that message out. Both are irrelevant. Both don't matter at all to your listeners. Who is in Downing Street doesn't matter. The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister. And the two things that matter for Labour between now and Christmas are the following. One is that Jeremy Corbyn has yet to launch his new left-wing party. I'm sure he'll get round to it, particularly when he can think of a name. I have very helpfully, in a spirit of amity, suggested the Jezbollah party. I think that would work pretty well.
And accurate.
and pretty accurate as well. And when that party's launched, remember, Labour's at 20 points in the polls at the moment. That's bad enough. When that party's launched, it will take another 3-4% off Labour. That will put Labour down with the Tories at 16-17%. That's extinction territory. And then the second thing, far more important than who the Chief of Staff is, or even what Mandelson said to the Prime Minister 3 or 4 days ago, is the budget. The budget's coming in November. Our taxes are going to be whacked up again. It's going to tilt the economy back into slow growth, just like our first budget did. That matters far more to people watching this show because it's their standard of living, it's their wages, it's their taxes, cost of living for them. And that's why I wrote this morning that although these have been the worst of times for Keir Starmer, I really, with the best will in the world, don't see them getting better.
No, I really don't. You mentioned, it's the economy, stupid, that famous line from the US politics. But it's the immigration issue, stupid, as well, isn't it, in this country? We know the polls keep saying that. We've got this one-in, one-out policy, this deal that was signed with Macron. Finally, we're told those first detainees from the Channel migrant boats are going to be sent back to France. We're going to get another flight coming back, which is going to bring us some people who apparently do have a strong case to be here. I mean, and then they'll bring all their families. I mean, meanwhile, we've got 31,000 people who've arrived illegally on those boats. They're the ones we know about, haven't come through other routes this year. I think most people would agree that this doesn't necessarily touch the sides of the policies that people are looking for. What do you make of the protests we've had recently, whether it's the protests against migrant hotels, often organised by mums and their families? What do you make of the march organised by Tommy Robinson, the Unite the Kingdom march on Saturday? I mean, huge numbers of people, people are variously saying between 150,000 and 1.5 million. We don't know. I always find it extraordinary that the police don't know within 20,000 how many people they are, but they don't. And the Prime Minister telling Tommy Robinson he will, quote, not surrender the British flag to violence. How dangerous is the public, not unrest, public protest against the immigration issue? How significant do you think that is going to be for the Prime Minister?
I think the immigration issue in many ways is as important as the economy because it suggests to British people that the British state has lost control of an important policy. There's a growing feeling in Britain that we pay more and more taxes and get less and less in return, and that the British state can't even control the borders of this country. It's incapable of stopping people from coming into this country who are coming in illegally, and once they're here, it's incapable of removing them in any great numbers. And I think when people fear, they're taxed up to the hilt at the moment. The tax burden is the highest it's been for over 70 years, highest it's been for most of my life, in fact. And yet when they see what they're getting in return, they are naturally unhappy. Now, a lot of the people, in fact, I think most of the people who were marching on Saturday are not far right. They were people concerned about the state of our country. And in a free society, they should be allowed to express that. There is, of course, a far right element tagged onto that. And I myself, I know this may not please a lot of you listeners, but I'm not comfortable, or it does not please me, that a politics in which Elon Musk and Steve Bannon and Tommy Robinson are pivotal figures is not something that I think is healthy for the country. Now, they can have their say like anybody else, but in Britain, we have always managed to avoid these kind of extremes. Mrs. Thatcher always made sure she would never be overtaken on the right, and she never was. She basically destroyed the National Front when she was leader. The Labour Party, the Social Democrats, patriots like John Healey, the defence minister, and so on, they always made sure the communists were kept out as well and kept at arm's length. And I just wonder now that because people are so frustrated because they feel quite rightly that the two mainstream parties have seriously let them down, have presided over a British state incapable of delivering even some of the most basics, despite the taxes we pay, that there is a drift to these more extremes. That's why we saw some of the violence on Saturday.
Well, a very small minority.
I understand that, but there was violence. And just as I would point out, there was violence in the Palestinian marches as well. And I don't think that was toughly dealt with enough. All violence and all political protest should be dealt with toughly to keep the way clear for those of us who want to protest peacefully. That's democracy. For me, that's Britain. We have to fight to defend that.
Absolutely. Andrew Neil, always a pleasure to speak to you, journalist and broadcaster. Andrew Neil, thank you very much for your thoughts on a lot of the very big topics. Sam Armstrong, just want you to come back on what he had to say about Danny Kruger. You are quite obviously very shell-shocked right now, having worked on Danny Kruger's campaign to try to elect Robert Jenrick as the leader of your party last year. Very serious figure. He's a serious figure. Andrew Neil, who's been around, I mean, no disrespect to him, he's been around a long time. He's counted them in, counted out. He thinks this, may well be the beginning of the end, an existential event for the Conservative Party.
It certainly feels that way, unless something very big changes very quickly in the Conservative Party. I genuinely fear, and I say this as a member, as someone who's worked for Conservative causes all my life, I genuinely fear that unless the party or its leader changes something very, very quickly indeed, that the Conservative Party will not be around to contest in a serious way the next general election.
Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. You're getting your calls on about that, about Keir Starmer, about a lot of people still want to talk about the Unite the Kingdom march on Saturday. You get to decide what you call in on. I'm going to get as many of your calls on air as I can. Lots more to come on the show, including why Prince Andrew may be sweating, not just Peter Mandelson, about his relationship, his close friendship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Also going to be talking about Donald Trump's visit to the US and, of course, that horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk and the repercussions of that. 12:24 is the time. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon, 12:26. Oh, 12:26, sorry, 28 is the time now here on Talk, the home of common sense. Let's get to your calls. Lots coming in on all the big topics today, concluding, of course, the defection of the first Conservative MP. I say first because it may well be the first of many. This is Danny Kruger's defected to Reform, so the Conservative Party is basically over. Let's talk to Tracy, who's in Burton-on-Trent, and give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Tracy, thank you so much for calling. What do you want to say about this defection?
I just want to say that if Danny Kruger comes across to Reform, can come up with and help get a set of policies that if Reform get into government, can transform this country and sort it out, I don't care where he's come from. I'm lucky enough that I live in a Reform controlled council. And I will be, and at the moment they don't seem to be doing too bad.
Yep.
But if they can deliver for me as a taxpayer, then I will vote. If Danny Kruger can help Nigel Farage and Reform Party come up with a way of sorting out this god-awful mess, okay, then that's fine by me.
Take it.
I don't care where he comes from.
Well, that's it. Can I just say, because lots of people are saying, and people often online, they're saying, look, you don't want a whole load of Tories, like when Nadine Dorries, I thought it was a big mistake actually from Nigel Farage last week at a party conference, week before last, to have Nadine Dorries on in the middle of his sort of first speech. Again, she's a former, I like her personally, but but she's a former, Tory minister. She was part of the problem. She thinks that Boris Johnson is the solution. He ain't the solution to anything, even to Boris Johnson. But a lot of people say, look, we don't want any more Tories in Reform. The whole point is it's an alternative Reform. Yeah. Nigel Farage has said he wants to destroy the Conservative Party. Why would a Tory want to join? But you're saying, if you're good and you can help make it work, we don't care where you're from.
I mean, if Ian Duncan Smith wanted to go to Reform, brilliant.
I think they'd welcome him with open arms.
I think they'd welcome him. I want people in politics, Julia, that are thoughtful, that are intelligent, that are quiet, and get on with stuff. That's what this country needs. I don't need a personality. I don't need sound bites. I want somebody that is serious and can do the job that the British electorate will ask for them. And if Danny Kruger and Reform can come up with a set of policies that I think can transform this country, I will vote for them. If they can't, I'm not going to. Can I just say one more thing?
Please do.
Thank you so much for going to Israel to highlight the issues.
It was an absolute privilege. Honestly, I cannot tell people how much this is. It's so much different from what people think. It's an incredible country.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I just want to say thank you for going. But as I say, if he can come up with, and you do need to. I'm sorry, but people need to get real. You do need to know how the system works to sort it out.
Yeah.
You just have to.
And that's part of Danny Kruger's job, is going to help them prepare a programme for government. Yeah.
And if he can do that,
fine.
That's
okay.
I judge people on what they do, not what they say.
Absolutely. I mean, very old-fashioned of you, Tracy. What can I say? Thank you so much for joining us and on that call. Let's go to another caller now. Sarah is in London. And Sarah, you want to talk about, and there's still lots to be talked about this, in terms of that Unite the Kingdom march on Saturday. You attended the march, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah. And I want you to watch. There's footage from there's an independent journalist on YouTube, DJE Media. Mm-hmm. He captured the most incredible footage from it. Mm-hmm. And the police, if you watch it, they could have caused a Hillsborough-type crush. They were completely unprepared for the numbers. It's crazy.
Which, given how many of them they had in their riot gear, you'd think they'd be, over-prepared.
Please watch the footage. DJE Media. You have to watch it.
I'll have a look. Yeah,
incredible. Thank you.
Do you? No, but you just think that basically the police weren't prepared. I mean that's quite something. Normally, if you organise a march, you have deal with the police. Where can we go? We're going to march down here to Whitehall, and then you have to give an idea of numbers. But by all accounts, the numbers who arrived totally dwarfed even what the organisers, including Tom Robinson, expected.
I know someone that was caught at the beginning of Westminster Bridge when they closed it off at like 2:30.
Yeah.
So the march started at 1 and they closed. So that tells you how quickly it must have filled up in Parliament Square.
Yeah.
And then the surrounding streets were just packed, Julia. Obviously, they're only counting the numbers in Parliament Square.
Yeah.
But the surrounding areas, it was crazy.
Okay.
So and I saw all walks of life there, Julia. There was no trouble. It was such a.
This is it. There was some violence. That was particular. It was a breakaway group that attended. Again, I know other people. I've got friends who were on that march.
But they wasn't a breakaway. They wasn't a breakaway. The police directed them up Victoria Embankment, and then they come around. If you look at the footage, the amount of people. There wasn't a breakaway group, Julia. Watch the footage on DJE Media. Even the police say, I don't know where they come from. That is on.
That's really helpful. I will have a look at that. Maybe we'll end up talking about it on the show tomorrow. Sarah, thank you so much for that call. I want to squeeze in another call before we go to a quick break. David is on the line. He's in Surrey. And David, you wanted to talk about, well, I suppose, the state of the Conservatives with Danny Kruger's defection to reform.
Yes, good afternoon, Julia. Firstly, I just quickly want to mention, because I know today is Battle of Britain Day, and earlier you were saying that 2/3 of Brits under 40 don't know about this event.
They're not taught about it. I wasn't taught about it at school. I knew nothing about it when I was at school.
Well, this is true. So in the past, I used to listen to Radio 4, and they had a thing on about the Battle of Britain pilots. And there was one pilot called Geoffrey Wellham, and I sort of, in my moment of like, wow, it's almost like meeting a sort of Hollywood film star, emailed Radio 4 and said, listen, this guy's a cool dude, as all the other guys were. They sacrificed so much for us, even though it's 85 years ago.
Yep.
So I contacted Geoffrey Wellham through Radio 4 by emailing Radio 4. And then I drove from where I lived in Surrey with my current girlfriend at the time down to a pub in Cornwall, because that's where he lived. And I bought him a pint of beer, but it was almost like a Leslie Phillips. It was almost like a Leslie Phillips moment.
Yeah.
Because my girlfriend at the time was rather glamorous, and he sort of went, oh, hello.
I think he'd earned the right to do that. Now, time is horribly against me. I hate to do this to you, David. What did you want to say about Kruger?
Well, I mean, I don't know each individual politician. No. We only vote for either Tory, Labour, Reform, the Greens, etc. I think the problem that Reform have got, and as many other sort of listeners and people across the political spectrum might say, is that they need to take in big hitters, they need to take in political heavyweights, but will they lose their identity? You mentioned about Nadine Dorries. Personally, I think she's doing it only to sort of try and grab the limelight. I'm not a fan of hers. Look at her record in the previous Tory
Online
government.
Safety Act, all that.
I think the problem you have, and I know you're very, very rushed, and thank you for having me on. I think the problem in this country is, can we believe a word that any politician says? So Reform at the moment are talking a really good game. They're talking about things that perhaps the Labour Party are shunning away from. But when they get into power, if they get into power, will they be able to deliver for the British people?
That's the question. That's the question. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the question. And I think at the moment the jury is out, because, I could turn around to you and say, Julia, I'm a billionaire, but I could be lying to you.
Yeah. Although, I can tell you, if you did turn around to say that to me and Peter Mandelson was listening, he'd try and come and stay at your house. So there's always a worry there, isn't there? David, I'm going to have to go. I've got to go to a break. They're shouting in my ear. David, thank you very much indeed for that. Up next, we are going to be talking about Donald Trump's visit to the UK starting on Wednesday, but also some more information about the suspect who has been charged with the murder of Charlie Kirk. That's up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:39 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's turn our attention to our American cousins. One of them, of course, is turning up on Wednesday. That's Donald Trump, the US president, on a 2-day state visit to this country. But, of course, also lots of news in the last week about the horrific assassination, the shooting dead while speaking live to students on a campus in Utah of Charlie Kirk. Well, let's talk about all this with Erin Moorcoat. She's a spokesman for Republicans Overseas UK and was a friend of Charlie's. Very good afternoon to you. And Errol, I send my sympathies to you for the loss of your friend.
Well, thank you, Julia. And it's not just my friend, but it's all of our friends. Charlie had a impact on people. He touched people. He met people, and he's such a short life. You know, he died at 31. He and I worked together, launching Turning Point UK. We were just boys comparatively. When we first met at Berkeley, we were kids. And then he became a man and died a man in the couple of years that, you know, men grow up. And it's something that's horrible and sad and terrifying to watch. Somebody who really believed in, somebody who I didn't believe in his message when I first met him. I thought, these people, we can't reach these people. And he really convinced me when I was a student at Berkeley that we could go out and talk to them and share our ideas.
And this is where his assassination, I think assassination is the right word, is so shocking because, and the outpouring of hate from many on the left. Now, look, I don't excuse the right, particularly the right in America, for some of the language. I mean, frankly, Donald Trump's own language over the years, belittling, threatening. So, you know, talking about, joking about shooting journalists and things like that. You know, it's, there's a lot of people who say stuff beyond the pale, but the outpouring by the people who think they're the good people on the left about Charlie Kirk's murder and sort of celebrating it, and we'll come to a man here in Britain, the Oxford Union president-elect, in just a moment, but it was very, very shocking. I was just in Israel last week, and this was something that, because Charlie Kirk was a big pro-Israel speaker, there was something that people found very shocking. And I was on an organised work trip, and one of the people with me on the trip was North Korean defector Yeonmi Park, who was due to be on that speaking tour, knew Charlie Kirk well, and obviously it was absolutely devastating for her. But the reaction from the left has been extraordinary. Do you think Charlie Kirk's assassination, does it change something that a man who said, let's use our words and let's try and change people's minds with words, being assassinated in cold blood by someone who disagreed with his words, it would appear, from the suspect who's been charged, do you think anything changes now?
I think it does, and it changes for the better and for the worse. There's two camps. There are people who are saying, Charlie would have wanted us to take his message and spread it. Charlie was a Christian. Charlie believes his soul is saved. Don't worry about Charlie. Charlie's watching us. There's that group. There's another group of people who are saying, we don't believe that this was going to work, and now we're confident that this isn't going to work. This isn't a bipartisan thing. We're not looking for commiseration. We're not looking to come back to the table. We sat down at the table, and you shot us in the chest. And that's the two camps right now in our party. There's a lot of hurt and division. And obviously, people have hurt feelings. They're going to react maybe negatively, or some people have hurt feelings. They react through faith. But right now, it's creating a schism in some degree between people who want to take this not in a physical or violent way. I'm not saying that, but who don't want to keep being that joyful warrior that Charlie was and would have probably wanted us to be. And there's people who are saying, no, let's keep that flame going. So that's I think that's natural and that's healthy. Everybody's going through those emotions, but that's the reality of it. People are not 100% united. There's so many different feelings, and feelings of anger, sadness, and people are scared also.
Would you want to go on a US campus tour and say anything and risk your life? I think would be a big question. I mean, Donald Trump has got, teams of security and all the protection. And when he was president-elect, he still faced two assassination attempts, one that got him, missed by a matter of centimetres. We've had some revelations about the suspect who has been arrested, Tyler Robinson, turned in by his own family, by his own father, who spoke to a friend who was a pastor who went to the police. It's been claimed by the Utah governor that the suspect accused of shooting Charlie Kirk dead was in a romantic relationship with his roommate, who's believed to be trans, as in a man who is busy thinking he's transitioning to be a woman, and that his roommate knew nothing about this. But the question that was asked of Charlie Kirk just at the moment when he was just answering the question when he was shot. We've seen, I'm sure everyone has seen that horrific image, footage online, was about trans issues. And he was someone who very much spoke up, against sort of the trans mania, the sweeping America, even worse than here. What do you make of that revelation from the Utah governor?
It doesn't surprise me whatsoever, based on the recent history of trans violence in the United States, as well as sort of. I'll put this in a very interesting sense. We crossed a cultural Rubicon unintentionally when we started to say silence is violence. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, people who were not being talked to were being transgressed upon. And then in the trans community, the concept of dead naming. Yeah. So if your name was Jack and I call you Jack, you turn to Jill and I call you Jack, I've equivalently murdered you. So dead naming, silence is violence, all of these things to turn passive people into enemies. So that is a lot of the culture where a lot of people who didn't really want to be involved got sort of lambasted as anti-trans or TERFs. For example, when women, J.K. Rowling has said more offensive things about trans people, by the way, than Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's entire thing...
I don't think she said anything offensive about trans
no, I don't think
people.
It's offensive at all myself, but based on how they take these things. She's a much more sterling defender of women in general. Charlie Kirk's main concept there was, hey, wait a second, if you're under 18, you can't get a tattoo, you can't do a lot of things, probably you shouldn't be able to mutilate your body. Yeah.
Not
Trans
controversial.
And said, oh, Charlie Kirk wants us all genocided. That was never the philosophy. So now we have an enemy in a people who we don't hate, a people who Charlie prayed for.
Yeah, it is utterly bizarre. What do you make, just finally on that issue, of the president-elect of the Oxford Union, the debating society at Oxford University, who celebrated the shooting of Charlie Kirk online, and then Dad said he shouldn't have, and then kind of defended it. He's gone on a number of times. He's now set to face disciplinary proceedings and a vote of no confidence over his role at the Oxford Union, but not as a student. Should he face any proceedings? There's going to be a vote from sort of lifetime members, basically, to say, we don't want someone who can debate a man face-to-face in the Oxford Union, as he did only a year or so ago, and then laugh about his death because he disagrees with his views representing this organisation. Do you think it's right that he should be forced out, or rather better, that he should resign?
Well, the way I look at it is not only did he fail to debate with any sort of articulation, he failed to even put on a suit and show respect to Charlie or the organization. Now,
there's normally black tie in a debate at the Oxford Union, actually.
Well, here's the thing. So I really showed up in the UK around 2017, 2018 when I started. When I showed up, the Oxford Union was a joke. I went to this place and I saw these people. Like, this was not an impressive organization to me. So my entire time in the UK, it's been a comedy show where I've had no respect for this organization. Now, I know the people who were there before I showed up in the UK were legitimate, and I've seen, things in the history. But my experience is that this is like a comedy organization of unqualified DEI kind of whiners and complainers who can't hold a real argument unless they're sitting around with each other. Yeah. So the Oxford Union to me is like, you could be, kicked out of Chuck E. Cheese for all I care. It doesn't mean anything to us anymore. Now, I know it means a lot in the UK, but if you want to save that organization, a man like this cannot be leading it. If he continues to lead it, the lack of respect, myself and others who weren't around since 1850 will continue to be at the Chuck E. Cheese
Also, level. this guy, George Aberrania, got into Oxford with 2 Bs and an A. The minimum requirements are 3 As, and most kids who get in get 3 A stars. So that tells you something's going on there. I also want to ask you just finally about the visit of the leader of the free world to this country, Donald Trump, on a state visit. He visited Scotland more recently, but he's going to be on a state visit, guest of the King, and he's going to be obviously with doing all of the state stuff we know he loves. We're playing our Trump card, ironically, with Donald Trump. How much of the fallout from our US ambassador, Peter Mandelson, being sacked over his close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, how much that fallout is going to damage this state visit, given that, of course, that Donald Trump was once friends with Jeffrey Epstein?
I would say that the damage would have to be entirely in the UK. in the United States, it's really not in the lexicon or conceptually who Lord Mandelson was, what happened. It was a blur for most Americans. Now, what that plays in the UK media, I think perhaps is much more substantial. And I think that maybe there will be some ways to try to overshadow his visit in some ways. But there's protests, there's everything against Donald Trump. So if they can tie anything to Trump, to Epstein and something, I guess maybe. But as far as how it plays domestically, how it plays with anybody in the US, we don't. I mean, no offense, we just don't know who your ambassador is. We never even...
Harsh but fair. If only we'd never heard of Peter Mandelson as well, we would be that lucky. Errol Moore-Coach, I so appreciate you joining us, Republicans Overseas UK spokesman. Going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking to our royal correspondent, Rupert Bell, about, we do know who Jeffrey Epstein is. We also know who Prince Andrew is. He may well be sweating today over the emails that are contained in all those files which we've seen about Peter Mandelson's emails to Jeffrey Epstein, about his own emails with his good friend, with whom he stayed good friends long after he was convicted of trafficking young underage girls for prostitution. We're going to be talking about that up next. This is Talk.
He has said and done things that have broken the law. And I do believe in forgiveness and repentance. He's done his time. That means that he gets at least legally a clean slate. And I think that means that particularly where he's demonstrated contrition, and he's admitted to all his many faults, it doesn't mean that we can simply throw the baby out with the bathwater with this guy, because he's always acting from a place of emotional integrity.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. 12:53 is the time. Ian Collins will be here in just a few moments to tell us what's happening on his show. First of all, though, let's talk about who might be sweating today. Yeah, it's Prince Andrew. Well, he can't be ousted from a job like Lord Mandelson was ousted as our ambassador to the US because he hasn't got one anymore. Did he really ever have one as a trade envoy? He's just well, the late Queen's son and the current King's brother. But Prince Andrew, of course, is yet another one of the many people who it seemed are attracted like moths to a flame to paedophile billionaires. Let's talk about that with Rupert Bell, his Talks World correspondent. Rupert, tell us why Prince Andrew is going to be worried today.
Well, because obviously we've seen these letters coming out that did for Peter Mandelson and his relationship. There is talk that something similar will come out and that will put further pressure on Prince Andrew to accentuate whatever the relationship and show it was perhaps closer than Prince Andrew has tried to say it was in that interview and in subsequent discussions about the topic. Yeah. So it is an act, well, for him, this Epstein problem will not go away.
No. Well, it won't go away partly because he lies about it. He was very clear that he didn't, he went, he ended his relationship with Epstein after conviction for, trafficking young underage girls. And of course, we know that was pleaded down absurdly. There was huge evidence of mass grooming and rape on a grand scale already at that time. And I'm still flabbergasted he was able to I'm sure buy his way out of that, which I'm sure is what's happened. But it is extraordinary that Prince Andrew's found out. No, we've seen pictures of him walking through Central Park with Jeffrey Epstein after that case, stayed at his house. After that all emerged as well. We've got the same with Peter Mandelson, who won't deny that he did stay at his house after that. This is extraordinary poor judgment.
Well, I'm afraid you'd have to say Prince Andrew's shown a lot of poor judgment along the way. So this is, particularly around, as he admitted, and Peter Mandelson has said the same thing. They both wish they hadn't. Well,
no, they wish we hadn't found out.
Yeah, well, OK, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. They shouldn't have spent the time of day with him, and Prince Andrew should have known better. Yeah. But unfortunately, he tried to deny the photograph of Virginia Giuffre, and there's a book coming out that I think on her memoirs, so that could heap further.
Well, her posthumous memoirs after she committed suicide, as many people who are victims of this sort of crime do, sadly.
Yeah, and it was, a sad and complicated life she led. But obviously, Prince Andrew, if there are allegations in that will put more pressure on him. He is so far from it will put him even further into isolation if he's not already within not only the British public but within the royal family.
Well, exactly. He still goes along to family events, obviously Christmas and things like that. But he's certainly supposed to be out of the public eye. But the interesting thing is he doesn't seem to accept that he's done anything wrong. We keep hearing he's trying to get back into the public eye and to get back his status, of course. But it's something I think the King made very clear, and I think Prince William as well, is never going to happen on their watch. But what is fascinating is that he clearly doesn't think there was anything wrong with that relationship. We understand some of the emails involve him sort of asking about when Virginia Giuffre first came forward with allegations. I need to find out some information. He's writing to Ghislaine Maxwell as well, but it doesn't smell good. It doesn't look good. But how much more damage can be done? Because we've already had a payoff of, 10, 12 million pounds in return for her dropping her claims against him. I mean, he denies ever meeting this woman, and yet he's paid, a huge sum of money to a woman he's never met. He's never defended the allegations in a court, never defended them in giving evidence to Congress. No one believes a word he says anyway.
Oh, I know, and there's no way back. Whatever happens, he's just in isolation. And from his perspective, he doesn't need to be forking out more money. But whatever comes out in these things, if they do, it will basically just mean he is now basically a prisoner in the Royal Lodge. And it is funny that you're seeing him denying all this. It doesn't feel responsible for this. Yeah. And you've got Prince Harry now in his interview saying, well, it's not my fault, Governor.
Yeah,
Again,
He hilarious. I mean, at times against, but he is hilarious. He said, I didn't wash any dirty laundry. It's like, you literally revealed private text messages and a physical fight with your own brother. I think that's what most people would call dirty laundry. Rupert Bell, thank you so much for joining us. Talks Royal Correspondent, thank you for that. Sam Armstrong, how much damage do you think this does to Prince Harry? And by reference then the rest of the royal family?
I just wish he could go off to California as well. Can we get rid of him, please? He can write a book. Maybe no one would read it. I just want him good. I want him gone.
I think that's kind of what King Charles and Prince William think too, isn't it?
He needs to get out of that house on Windsor, because the longer he is here, the more damage he is causing to his brother's his brother's
My thing is, I
reign.
just don't believe that senior figures in the royal family didn't know about this relationship, and it wasn't dealt with a long time ago. Right, thank you so much, Sam Armstrong. He's still recovering. He's still in shock, poor soul, about his good friend and colleague in the Conservative Party, Danny Kruger, who has defected, first sitting Conservative MP to defect to Reform, and he's saying it'll be the first of many. Ian Collins, I'm sure that will come up on your show. What else are you talking about?
It will. You know when we do our handovers,